All right, I now call to order the July 9th, 2024 regular meeting of the Town of Wellington Board of Trustees, time being 6:35 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, may you roll call, please?
Trustee Cannon. Here. Trustee Daly.
Present.
Trustee Moyer.
Here.
Trustee Teets.
Here.
Trustee Meagan. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Here.
Mayor Shosse.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I do have an amendment. I would like to move consent agenda item 5, a resolution at the Town of Wellington, Colorado, appropriating capital project funds to Parks Project for the fiscal year 24 to the action items, please.
Perfect. Mr. Clerk, can we move that to item E4?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if I might ask, I know that there's some people who have vested interest here in the crowd today. Is it possible we could move it to the beginning of the agenda?
You certainly could if you'd like, Mr. Mayor.
Number 2?
Okay, yeah, we can move it to E2.
Understood.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to request an executive session for purposes of receiving legal advice. At the very end of the agenda, it can be following all of the reports, so we don't have to have anybody in the audience leave and come back. But just so
Okay.
you know, I'd like to request that.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily have to be added to the agenda, but I want to make you aware of that at this time.
Thank you, sir. All right, are there any conflict of interest for the members this evening? No. Okay. Next is public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak, please sign on the sheet at the podium, state your name for the record. You'll be given 3 minutes.
Hello, my name's Karen Eifert and I live in the Knolls. I'll sign right after I'm done speaking. I came this evening because I wanted to talk a little bit about inclusion and not exclusion. And so I would just like to have you all aware of, and I've said this before up here, in 1977, that's the year I was born, we came up with the ADA laws with Americans with Disability Act. Prior to that, we had the 504 Act as well. And that is an all-inclusive. That is not, I'm going to give you partial inclusion. You better be grateful for what I gave you. We give you a little bit. It's an all the way. That includes all inclusive. That's not a, here, I'm going to help Tommy to help him fasten his jacket. But Tommy has to get on his shirt, pants, socks, and tie his shoes all by himself. That's not it. That's if Tommy needs me to put on his shirt, help him with his underwear, help him with his socks, tie his shoes, help him with a hat. If Tommy has long hair and he needs to put it back in a ponytail holder because he can't stand the wind because he has autism and doesn't like how it feels, guess what? I have to help Tommy with all of those steps. I can't say, I only help with tying your hair back and only gonna help you put on your jacket. That's not inclusion. That's me excluding Tommy and his needs by not including those other things. And I think it's highly important for the town of Wellington to know what the difference is. You cannot say, I will help with A, B, and C, and there's A through Z that you're neglecting, only touching A, B, and C. So I just want to make it clear to the people of the town of Wellington, inclusion means that you're going to help with every part of it. It does not mean, well, I'm going to help with A, B, and C, and the rest of it's just going to have to wait till when I feel like it. I went through the same thing with my son's teacher and principal and the Poudre School District. My son Devin is 19 now. Devin did not have fused vertebrae in his neck until probably about 8 or 9 years old. And you know the soft spot that infants have on top of their head? Yeah, my son had that until he was about 12 years old. So no fused vertebrae in his neck meant if he went out on the playground and he played on that playground and he fell off and there was nobody there to work with him, hold on to his hand, maybe help him understand, oh, Devin, don't get too close to the edge. What would happen to my child if he fell off that playground? He would break his neck. There's no fused vertebrae. So either my child is dead, my child has a broken neck, he's a quadriplegic, or a paraplegic. Are any of those outcomes that I would be satisfied with? No, not on this earth. So I knew the federal mandate laws, and those federal mandate laws go for municipalities as well. If you're going to include something, which is what you should be doing, and which this town has said that they are going to do, this board has said you're going to make things more inclusive for our children and for our other residents that live here with disabilities. If you're going to do that, then you need to do it all the way. Just like the principal and the board were not happy to hear that it was federally mandated for them to make my son have available to him a paraprofessional when he was out on the playground, just like he had when he was inside the school. It's not a thing where you can say, well, we just can't afford it right now. Well, if you're going to do it and you have a plan to do it, there's funding for it. And if you don't have the funding for it, then you need to make a plan to address that funding before you do anything else to that area. Because that area needs to be available to anyone with any abilities and not just a little part of it, all of it. Otherwise, you're excluding, and that's just not right.
Thank you. All right, next we have a presentation. It'll be CDOT 101 from Miss Jamie Grimm.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Jamie Grimm, and I am the local government liaison, one of the local government liaisons for CDOT. There are two of us, and we have divided up the state, and I have Northeastern Colorado. I grew up in Fort Collins and have been up to Wellington many times. I was laughing. I used to play softball out on that field, and there was a little bit of trauma from like being covered in dirt and all of that stuff. So we, across the state, we did a study last year, and one of the things we discovered was that we had very engaged local elected officials, and then we had other local elected officials who weren't necessarily that interested in transportation, but wanted more information about what CDOT did, what their responsibilities were, things like that. And so we've committed to going around the state and doing quick presentations to county commissioners, city councils, etc., just to hear questions people are curious about, things that maybe they've always wondered about but haven't gotten answered, and just see what folks are thinking. So I wanted to start with high winds possible. That's definitely something you guys deal with up here, maybe more than some of the other towns. When I was a kid, I learned that Chicago was called the Windy City. And I think I was like 6, and I said to my mom, like, have they ever been to Cheyenne? I don't understand. So next slide, please. There's a lot of information in this slide deck. I'm not gonna read it to you, but just wanted to throw up our vision, mission, and values. The number one thing at CDOT that is the most important thing to us is always going to be safety. Safety of the traveling public, safety for employees, making sure that our system is working well and keeping folks safe. So that's why it's our number one value. But then obviously, people integrity. We want to be as transparent as possible and be a good public service. So next slide, please. Just wanted to give you some statistics. Colorado is a very, very big state and incredibly diverse in terms of geography. We have blizzards and wind on the eastern plains. We have a huge population dealing with traffic in the urban core. And then obviously we have the western slope with avalanches and Glenwood Canyon closing, etc. And more dramatic natural disasters happening there. So just want to give you an idea of how big we are. CDOT takes care of over 23,000 lane miles. We plowed over 6 million lane miles last winter. we do have the Division of Aeronautics under the CDOT umbrella, so we are involved in 76 public use airports. However, CDOT does not, aeronautics, it's kind of one of those situations where they didn't know where else to put them. And so they ended up in under the CDOT umbrella, but our CDOT administration does not control, they have their own board. So, but under the CDOT umbrella, we do have public use airports, almost 3,500 bridges and structures. We maintain a lot of avalanches, many more than a lot of people think. They're pretty incredible to get to watch come down. And so encourage you to go to our YouTube page if you ever want to watch some big snow move. And then Bustang continues to grow post-COVID. And so we had 100.9 million service miles last year. So big state, a lot of things going on. CDOT is governed by a transportation commission. They are appointed by the governor, and the state is broken up by population. We are in District 5, and your commissioner is a gentleman named Jim Kelly. If you'd like it, I can get you his information. But the Transportation Commission, because CDOT's budget is somewhat independent from the state's budget, we don't take money from the general fund. We have our own governing board that determines our budgets and our how we spend our dollars. And so they are the group that looks at, approves our budgets, approves big projects, approves funding allocations, as well as financing operations, similar to what we're seeing on I-25. And so they manage the operations of CDOT. And as I said, appointed by the governor. So let me know if you'd like Jim's contact info. I know he'd be excited to hear from you guys. Next slide. CDOT, we are a big state, as I've mentioned a few times. And what we have done is we've divided the state into 5 engineering regions. And what that means is that we recognize that you can't be controlling you can't be running everything out of Denver. You need to have people on the ground in the areas that they're working in. So we're in Region 4, which is northeastern Colorado. There are 13 counties, and it touches Wyoming, Nebraska, and Kansas. And so it is a very big area. It also includes Boulder County, Weld County, so some very diverse stakeholders as well as Larimer County. And then we've got the Western Slope, which is handling the I-70 corridor, as well as, you know, places like Steamboat, the mountains, and then Southwest Colorado, which is kind of the Durango area and the Valley, if you're, and then 2 Southwestern Colorado, and then 1 is, this is the Denver metro area, or if you're familiar, it's the Dr. Cog boundary. So next slide, please. So just wanted to go over our budget. We do have a $1.8 billion budget, which is pretty incredible. The majority of our funding does come from the federal government through the gas tax. The federal gas tax right now is 18.4 cents and has not been raised since 1992. What those dollars come down to us through what's called a federal formula. And so they have taken states' lane miles, their populations, the number of bridges they have, their freight traffic, et cetera, and created a formula that disperses money across the country. And so that's where we're getting the majority of our funds. The second place where we're getting our funds is from the Highway Users Tax Fund, which is your state taxes that you pay towards transportation. So that is the gas tax, but it's also like the taxes that are the fees that are on your registration that goes to bridge and tunnel, et cetera. So we do have a bridge and tunnel enterprise. What that does is that is a fund that goes directly towards fixing bridges and tunnels that are in poor condition. Tunnel is in there so that we can leverage that funding to fix to work on the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel. The bridge and tunnel enterprise, because it's an enterprise, what it allows us to do is leverage financing to fix those bridges, because bridges are expensive. As I said, aeronautics is under the CDOT umbrella, but has its own board that distributes its own funding. And then other state funds, some of that is coming from the state legislature, some of that is coming from grants, just a lot of different places. And then we do have other CDOT enterprises. An enterprise is when you have a fee, under Tabor, an enterprise, the fee must go into a specific pot of money. And so we have several enterprises under CDOT that relate to the fees. So we've got the Clean Transit Enterprise, we've got the Transportation Investment Office, which is what manages the tolling in the state. And then as well as air pollution mitigation. And so those funds are very specific in what we can use them for. And they each have their own boards as well. Next slide, please. Just wanted to give everyone an idea of how we spend our funds. More than half of our budget goes to capital construction and maintenance and operations. Maintenance and operations is mostly funded by federal funds. Maintenance and operations can get very expensive depending on what's going on. If you have a bridge suddenly closed down on US 50 outside of Gunnison, that's going to affect your maintenance and operations budget, as well as if we have a really big snow year, or if we have, God forbid, a landslide in Glenwood Canyon, et cetera, things like that. But capital construction is really a huge focus for us right now. And then we have other programs that take up some of our funding, like multimodal services, things like bus staying. And then we have debt service because we have taken on financing in the past to pay for various projects. Next slide, please. So hopefully you've heard a lot about CDOT's 10-year plan. What we did in 2019 was we went around the state and we worked with various stakeholders to identify projects that were incredibly important in different regions. And we created a strategic pipeline of projects. We are currently in year 6 of the 10-year plan. We have completed 100% of the projects that were in years 1 through 4, which is a lot of projects. It looks like 54 projects, and these are large. This is like I-25 section 7 and 8, a large bridge intersection in Durango, the Gap project in Southern Colorado. So these are large projects that we're getting done, which is really incredible. In Region 4, they've completed 25 projects in 2023. Those are not all necessarily 10-year plan projects, but just telling you how busy Region 4 is getting things done. They have 8 large projects going on and 25 projects that are getting set to begin this year. As I said, 54 projects out of the 10-year plan. And we are actually getting ready to, we're reaching the end of the 10-year plan. And so we're going to begin doing public outreach again at the end of this year and the beginning of this year to start putting together new projects to go on the next iteration of the 10-year plan. So, next slide, please. Just some more statistics about things that CDOT did last year. We improved so one of the big things that we're really proud of is we've really tried to make rural paving a big priority for CDOT. And we improved 818 rural miles across the state last year, which is quite a few miles to do work like that. Some of those had not been touched in 20, 30 years. They'd had very basic improvements. And so these did things like repaved, put in shoulders, put in turning lanes, things like that. We have been very fortunate with the federal infrastructure bill. There's quite a bit of grant funding going around, and we were able to secure, I think actually it might be a little bit more than 73 million, but those are going into projects around the state. We got money for the Floyd Hill project. We got money for a project out on 76. We have projects all over the place, and it's been really interesting to be working on those grants as part of the federal infrastructure bill. And then next slide, please. So just wanted to give you guys an idea of how much work Region 4 is doing. I'm not going to go through these. These are completed projects. And then if you go to the next slide, these are projects that are currently underway. And then the next slide is these are projects coming up in the next couple of years. So there's a lot going on. And then next slide, please. So I'm actually going to kick it over. I have brought the North Program Engineer for Region 4, James Usher, and I brought him in to give an update on I-25. And if you have any project questions, he's your guy.
No, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, so James Usher, CDOT North Program Engineer for Region 4. So I-25, it's a lot of good news there. I think predominantly through some of the new funds that were coming into the state and some of the federal grants. We were able to accomplish a lot. I think a lot of the work between Fort Collins and Berthoud is predominantly done now. There's some finishing touches. You'll notice that the express lanes out there, they're still not charging for tolls yet. That's coming once they get all the tolling equipment up and ready to roll. That's where it'll either be HOV for three or more people, or you'll pay for a toll to be in that lane. So that is coming. And that was part of the financing to pay for those improvements as well. So we actually, Region 4, CDOT actually got a loan to be using the toll revenues to be able to pay for those infrastructure improvements. So that work is predominantly done. The next phase, if you've driven down to Denver lately, as you notice, as you get past just south of Berthoud, so Berthoud to Highway 66, they are starting that stretch. That stretch is fully funded to add express lanes and improve the bridges and interchanges. So that is underway. That's probably going to be, a good 2-year project. So it's a little bit. It's one of those where it's like you finally see some relief out of all the construction, especially that section between Loveland and Fort Collins. That was a lot for many years, and now that commute to Denver, could be a little bit congested, but they're going to do their best to keep 2 lanes open at all times, and then some nighttime closures. So that's underway, and then we have our maintenance project up north of Wellington that's happening right now. So we're replacing as many cracked concrete slabs as we can. We don't have enough money to do them all, but we're taking care of the worst of the worst. Northbound is predominantly done. That's all smoothed out and sealed. It's riding really well. Southbound, they're working on that right now. I know there's a plethora of complaints from Allocations to the south with the new pavement that they put in. Contractor had some issues with their paver, but they are remedying that. And then when they're all done, it's going to ride just as smooth as the new northbound section does after they ground all that. So that's good news. That should be completed in about November is when they're anticipating that. So right now they're going to be coming in. They're going to be bringing in the diamond grinding machines and starting to work on grinding the pavement from Allocations to the south. And then about in August, replacing the concrete slabs south of Wellington into Fort Collins. They're going to start on that, and they're planning on being done in November. So those, as far as projects, active construction projects, was the updates there. And any other project related questions, I'm happy to answer that you have right now too. Trustee Teets?
I do have questions. And while I love all this and I love the presentation, I was really hoping for the CDOT 101 to be more geared towards Wellington. The 20-year plan as far as what we're looking at for what happens with our interchanges, if we're looking at getting an additional interchange down at, is it 58? 58. Those are the kind of updates that I was hoping for with the CDOT 101 is something that pertains and relates here to Wellington.
Sure.
So if you can stem off of this presentation and focus a little more, I don't know if you have that in your future discussions for these PowerPoint right now.
That's not in this presentation, but I'd be happy to talk about it.
That would be amazing.
So, a lot of it, I think Jamie hit on, is there's the kind of the limited funding, but there's the needs far outweigh that. So a lot of it comes down to planning and prioritization. She hit on that original pipeline of projects, that first 10 years. We are jumping into that process right now to update that 10-year list. So I think the biggest thing for communities now is knowing that we're entering in that season, is any priorities that you have, by all means, come to us, let us know those needs. We know that the Highway 1 and I-25 is a huge priority. I can tell you from myself and from our region director, Heather Paddock, we all agree that something needs to happen there, but it's a matter of attracting the dollars to make it happen. Just throw it back of the napkin estimate to improve that Highway 1 and I-25. We're probably in the area of $50 million. So, but I do have some news on that tonight. So one of those understanding that sometimes, it's like the greasy wheel, or it gets the grease, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But a lot of it is being able to tell the story. It's one thing is like, we hear the need. But when we go into the prioritization exercise, we want something in black and white that we can show as here's the need. So I have some news tonight that we're actually moving forward with an operations and safety study of the Highway 1 and I-25 interchange. So we have some region priority funds that we kind of have discretion within the region that we can use. And really what we want to do with that study is take a whole look at the interchange, not only the interchange, but we understand that there's pedestrian issues for the neighborhood to the east crossing the interstate. That is a huge issue that we want to be able to look at. So that whole area, the interchange area and to the south with the pedestrian issues, we want to take a look at safety, operations, get traffic numbers, and be able to paint a good picture of what the issues are today and what the issues could be in the future if nothing's done. That way, once we enter into this new planning process, we can go, as CDOT we know, but also it's a tool that the town staff can go when we go into the planning meetings with the upper front range, the planning region that we have, and say, hey, this is an issue that we have at Highway 1 and I-25. Something needs to be done. It needs to be a TPR or the planning region priority as we enter in that phase. That way, it can get on a list because ultimately it's, there's so many projects, there's lots of lists. Ultimately, it needs to be on a list and it needs to get up towards the top of the list so we can attract funding. And so that's really what our goal is of the studies, to be able to paint that picture. Because we know it is a huge need.
Got it. Is there items to present to you guys when you're getting ready to go into this 10-year planning section? Is there items that prove more beneficial that help bump us up? So say the PUD development that's getting ready to go in on the south of town where you're looking at thousands of new home additions as well as a commercial hub and items like that. Is that the kind of things that you guys are needing when you go into these sessions? Are you only taking that traffic study and investigative process in with you?
So that's something that, as far as in the traffic study, that's something that we would want to include in the traffic study. So if there are new developments, so we'd want to take that into account in the safety and in the operations. That way we have this development coming. This is what that could do to safety and operations in the future. That way it's included as part of the study. And that's something that we can work with Cody and Bob on as we get this the study started.
Perfect. And I know I've sent a lot of emails, so I'm sorry. When it comes down to it, when you look at the study, and I know I had not had this question answered yet, and I think I've asked it for almost 2 years. What percentage, when you do the new traffic study, what percentage bumps us up the list when you're looking at the increase of traffic coming back and forth? Is there a specific number that you base that decision off of?
There's not a specific number. I mean, I think there's multiple things that go into it. A lot of it is, weighing that need to other projects on the list. If there's, we'll look at, one of them could be safety. We call it a level of safety service. And, we look at those numbers of what's the, how much could safety be improved by implementing this project, and what's the benefit cost to that. Same thing. So that's something that we look at as far as how much our operations going to be improved by implementing and comparing that against other projects. And because the benefit cost is huge right now, especially with the federal infrastructure bill, as we go after grants, a lot of those to be competitive for those grants, you want to make sure you have a very high benefit cost. So those are the projects that do have a high benefit cost. Those are typically the ones that we can help prioritize, because maybe you don't need the full amount, but maybe if you have a small amount of seed money that you can use for local match, then you can at least get it started and start chasing after grant funds as well.
Got it. So would they like to see possibly like a CIP fund that has been established stating that we are going to start saving or reserving money for?
That definitely helps as well. Whenever there's local partnerships, or if there's whether it's CIP funds, or if there's, say, if it was a town or the county was saying, hey, that we see this need and we want to contribute as well, as whether that's a local match, that's something that always makes, whether it's monetarily or other support, that really helps bolster grant applications, of knowing that there's strong local support for a project. That's exactly how all this work on I-25. I mean, to make that happen, I mean, there was I-25 coalition where all the communities banded together. Johnstown, Fort Collins, Loveland, you name it, all these communities came together, they contributed, and, you know, they lobby, they work with lobbyists to really let it be known that, hey, this is important to us. So it's any time that you can rally the troops in that regard is going to be a benefit.
And I appreciate those meetings that you guys host every month. It's very educational and is really beneficial towards our community moving forward in the next few years with the planned growth that we do have. One other thing is I want to say thank you very much to the response of the request asked from our residents for the turn arrow on the east side of I-25. That was very, very well received, and I saw nothing but praise. Nothing but praise across the community for finally having that turn arrow. And I know it was a little fix, but it demonstrated that CDOT was listening when residents were sending emails. And I think that was the kudos to that. So thank you very much again, because I know it was a group effort, but my emails went directly to you, which went, I'm sure, somewhere else. So that one I am grateful for, because I live on the east side as well, and it increases my mobility to come to this side of the interstate and not wait 20 minutes at a light. So I'm very grateful. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Trustee Keenan.
Two things. I also say thank you for the turn arrow, although tonight I had to sit through 3 cycles of the turn arrow because it was only on for 5 seconds, letting 3 cars by, and then I had to wait for the whole process. Anyway, I could use some work. To ensure that Wellington's needs are addressed in the Highway 1, I-25 interchange there, the bridge and so forth like that. You mentioned, Cody Bird and Bob Galman. Well, what else can we do? Do we get involved with the TPR to make sure that the TPR lists that as a priority? Do we lobby the TPR to ensure that that priority is high on the list? Those are the kind of questions I have about logistically, how do we ensure that this need is identified and prioritized properly?
It's definitely multifaceted. It starts with the region for sure. And I can tell you what, between myself and my region director, Heather Paddock, both of us are on the side of this. Something needs to happen here. It's a matter of how do we get there? How do we get it prioritized and funded? Working with the TPR, entering the planning process and making sure that it gets risen in priority. And I think also, that working with the Transportation Commission, I would, letting, whether it's somebody from the town staff or the town board, talking to Jim Kelly and letting it be known of here's the issues. And I think kind of that multifaceted approach of letting folks know if these are the issues, I think it will help. And I think also once we get that study completed, to have it in black and white, that something a little bit more tangible to go with it will help as well.
Thank you. When you were talking about if anyone would like to know the contact information for Mr. White, I would. So
Yes, I will.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
Member 10.
Ms. Grimm, Mr. Usher, thank you guys for coming down tonight. Really appreciate the presentation. Seems like you guys have a whole lot of work going on, but as to add to what my fellow board members have already said here, obviously Wellington's very important, and I think we need to get some of these things a little further up the list, specifically the overpass. One other thing I'd like to bring up is potentially a stop for the bus thing. I know that you guys have mentioned that you're seeing increased ridership there, and certainly Wellington would love to be a part of that as well. But I do also want to thank you guys for your participation with the Cleveland Avenue Improvement Project. There's a lot of money you guys have put in there, and we certainly appreciate your support on that, and as well as the turn signal. I think Mr. Usher and we had talked about that at a community meeting with Mr. Kafalis almost 2 years ago now. So really, thank you for that. But other than that, like I said, it's very important to us that we get Wellington on these project lists. And if there's somebody we need to reach out to, certainly pass those contacts along. We'd love to be a part of that. So thank you.
Trustee Daly.
I would reiterate everything that everyone else has said at this point. Those are on my list. But the other item I wanted to hit again is Mustang, any future train plans. It'll be too late when those are already in planning to start considering maybe Wellington. We need to be on the front end of that, knowing that we need to be one of the stops included in initial planning, as well included within busting as soon as possible, because that's going to, create the map of what we're considering for trains in the future. We have to be included in these projects. We have no other public transportation that's extended from the county perspective or the state perspective to our town. And we're along I-25. It's unacceptable. So I also wanted to say thank you for the County Road 9 partnership and program, and you guys taking that over. That is paramount, of course, the safety for our families going to and from school. So I appreciate the partnership there and with Cleveland Avenue and you guys participating in that project. So thank you very much. But otherwise, I have to reiterate the I-25 overpass is that most importance, and we're only growing from here out. We're already challenged. So you've already mentioned that you're aware of this, but I have to put my support in there too. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Trustee Meagan.
Appreciate everything you guys are doing, but I do want to reiterate on the turn arrow over there. Coming over tonight, there was probably 15 to 20 cars coming from the north to the south. 4 cars went from south to the north. So you need to probably recalibrate that. Not sure exactly how you would do it. Also, too, have you guys thought about having a separate turn lane going from the south over the bridge at that point? And so you could have both directionals going at that point. I mean, we have plenty of room on that side, so it just
like
help.
A turn lane going to the west and a through lane going to the north.
Right.
Okay.
And I think there's plenty of room for that. So, I mean, I think that would ease up some of the congestion up there too.
I can take that back to our traffic group for sure.
Perfect. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. We definitely need a bridge. And for our kids' safety over there, especially, we got another addition coming in on the other side. So access from that side over to our schools is pretty limited, and the more we can do, the better it is. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Moore.
Yeah, thank you for advocating for Wellington and being great partners. I want to just echo everything that my fellow trustees have said, and that we are important, and I feel like it's time that we see some changes happen. I'm the acting chair of Safe Routes to School, and I just want to echo my fellow trustee here, Mr. Meagan, and just stress how important it is for us to get that underpass tunnel looked at and figure out a way for our children to be able to make it safely to school. It's not acceptable at this moment. There are a lot of issues. So just thank you for advocating for us, and we are willing to do whatever it takes to get at the top of that list.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank both of you for coming and presenting. I am very glad to hear that you guys are taking the overpass seriously and getting that study going. It is a huge need, and very appreciative that you guys are taking that seriously. Other than that, I would just repeat what everybody else has said, so I don't need to do that. So thank you very much for your time and coming up here today.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I did add a couple more slides, just for information about TPRs and MPOs. I know that's a conversation that you guys have had a lot.
Jamie, will you do me a favor, just for the public that doesn't know what like the TPR and NPO is? Do you mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, you tried to give me the hook and I'm still here. The state of Colorado is broken up into 15 regional transportation planning regions. And the idea behind, they're called TPRs. The idea behind the TPR is that transportation planning should be driven by regional and local interests, not necessarily from Denver. So there are 10 TPRs that are considered quote unquote rural. And the reason we use that is because metropolitan planning organizations are in urban areas. They have to have a population of at least 50,000. Typically, they are significantly larger than that. The largest in the state is, and I threw this acronym out earlier, and I apologize, I should have spelled it out, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is Dr. Cog, not actually a doctor, which I was very confused about for a couple years. They are the MPO for Denver. We do have an MPO up here, but Wellington is not a part of it, and I am not the expert on why, so I don't know that I can answer those questions. The North Front Range MPO is Fort Collins, Greeley, Loveland, kind of that area. And they are responsible for planning within that. And MPOs are determined by the federal government and the census. The state of Colorado, we at CDOT don't really have any control over the MPO boundaries. In terms of TPRs, they work, so Wellington is in the Upper Front Range TPR, which is rural Larimer County, so Estes Park, Wellington, et cetera, and then rural Weld County and Morgan County. And those boundaries are established by the Transportation Commission, but within those, so TBRs are managed by the local governments. They're called regional planning councils. That is so you guys are Wellington City Council inside Wellington. The regional planning councils are the governing body of the TPRs, but we use them interchangeably. So the reason I say that is TPRs are run and managed by the local governments. It's not managed by CDOT. We are partners, but you guys are the ones who are driving the process. So in terms of the 10-year plan, we will be working with the TPRs to prioritize projects. I hate to use this term because it's not really the best term, but in terms of shovel ready, that's a term I know that a lot of people have heard over the years. When you have done plans and you can walk into a situation with data, and you can walk in if you have local funding, that makes the project much more achievable. So the projects that typically go onto the 10-year plan already have work done. They have had the studies done. They have had some planning. Sometimes they have some design. They're more likely to be put on the list. So in terms of getting the interchange, I would definitely encourage you to keep working with the I-25 Coalition. They have been a huge partner in all of this. We would not have gotten segment 7 and 8 started for like 5 more years if it hadn't been for the coalition. They were the ones who really drove the conversation. The other thing is once you have that data, and if you're willing to bring money to the table, that makes you more appealing for a federal grant as well. And if you can get federal grant money, that's going to push the project forward. You were asking about numbers, moving things up the plan. CDOT is there, it's all different colors of money. And so one of the challenging things when you're funding a project is you don't have a project that's necessarily 100% funded from, the infrastructure bill. You don't have a bridge that was funded by one specific project. It's all different colors of money. So the 10-year plan, we do have 10 years mapped out, but it is a little bit flexible based on what money comes up. So during the pandemic, we had some infrastructure, what's the word I'm looking for? We had some rescue dollars, thank you, that came in. And because we had the 10-year plan, we were able to look at the plan and pick out the projects that were eligible for that funding. So they may not have been number 1 on the plan next in line to get funding. They were the ones that were eligible for that color of money. So that's the other thing with the overpasses. It's going to be a lot of different colors of money. And so figuring out how to harness that. But getting the study done is one of the best things that can be done right now to get that up there. And then working through the Upper Front Range and working through the coalition.
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, Johnny Olson, the previous director of this region up here, had come to the Wellington board about 6 years ago and said, well, if you can come up with about $1 million to do this preliminary plan, maybe a 30% drawing or something like that, that's going to help you with putting it on the list. So is there a magic number out there that like Johnny Olson once quoted?
No.
So it's just matching funds.
I
I don't-
Where he was getting at, probably have some preliminary design.
That
Yeah.
was what it was,
Yeah,
yes.
just some seed money to get some concepts put together. And that's probably somewhere in the ballpark, maybe a little bit more to get the conceptual drawings.
Okay. And the second point I wanted to make is I'm an advocate of Wellington being part of the MPO here. Mainly because we're neighbors we're on the I-25 corridor, we're neighbors with Fort Collins. We are larger than Timnath, we are larger than several other communities that are in the MPO. We have a regional alliance with these communities more so than we do with Brush or Estes Park or places in Fort Morgan or parts east and the extreme west. And we tried several years ago to get opinions to change so that we could join the MPO. We was contacting TPR communities and MPO communities. And we were told it was denied because there was opposition to us leaving the TPR because they would suddenly get less money. And I would not want to be, as a community leader, I would not want the town to be penalized in our ability to get effective transportation planning done with our regional partners, simply because someone in Morgan County would miss the couple of $1,000s that our absence would lessen that pool. So I am a big advocate of joining the MPO, and I will still fight for that all the time until we can get that accomplished.
Sure, and just reiterate, CDOT doesn't necessarily make that decision, and so that was why I was stressing that it's local governments who control those, because that's who you're gonna have to negotiate with, sorry.
Do we need to ask permission for like Timnath, Fort Collins, stuff like that
Yeah,
to gain access to
Mhm.
be
so
included in that?
it has to be, if a community wants to change TPRs, both TPRs have to approve it. So North Front Range would have to, their board would have to approve adding you as a community, and Upper Front Range would have to approve you leaving. And what happened a few years ago was Upper Front Range did not want to lose the funding that you guys bring to Upper Front Range because of GHG mitigation dollars and CMAQ dollars and things like that. So yeah, unfortunately, because you weren't put into the MPO by the census, you're gonna have to get in on an administrative process. And it's gonna be a challenge because it's just gonna be a difficult administrative process. So NFM, North Front Range has also looked at that and what administering another community would look like. But yeah, you're gonna have to have support from both sides.
Got it.
So.
Do you feel that that study that we have done and how greatly it's affecting our community would benefit to present to that upper, just
Which
say,
study?
so once we have the study that you guys are discussing, do you think it
Oh.
would be of benefit to present it to them and say, these are the struggles? This is what we're going through. This is what our community is dealing with. This is why we need this transition. Do you think that would assist and help solidifying a decision to allow us to join in what we actually are in the I-25 corridor community?
I can't speak for those boards. I
Got
don't
it.
know. But North Front Range, Suzette Millette, who has been the director of North Front Range for a very long time, is retiring this year, and there's a new director coming on. So I would encourage you guys to maybe reach out and have him come up and introduce himself so that you guys can meet him, and encourage you to come to Upper Front Range meetings. I know Trustee Cannon has been to many. And I just want to address one more thing about Front Range Passenger Rail. They are their own division. And so I would definitely encourage you to reach out to them. The Northern Colorado representatives are Johnny Olson and the mayor of Berthoud. His name is Will Karsbeck.
Right. My concern is if we're not even on busting, why would they consider us?
Oh, and we have been talking to Wyoming about what the feasibility of doing Wyoming, Wellington,
Perfect.
and down is.
Yeah, if we're already
So-
included in that plan, it looks a lot better if we're
Yeah.
asking for
No,
larger infrastructure.
There have definitely been conversations about getting Wellington on. It's kind of do we have enough buses and headway times and things like that.
Let us know how we can help.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Yeah, we want you guys on the Bustang Trail.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay, I'm
guys
leaving.
very
I'll
much.
stop.
All right. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item E1? Oh, never mind. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the titles for the items of the consent agenda?
D1, June 25, 2024 regular meeting minutes. D2, resolution number 32-2024, a resolution of the town of Wellington making an appointment to the planning commission. D3, resolution number 33-2024, a resolution approving the Baker Tilly US LLP amended agreement letter to provide financial management services to the town of Wellington. D4, resolution number 34-2024, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, amending capital projects funds for water fund project allocations in fiscal year 2024.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve this consent agenda.
I second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Trustee Cannon.
Yes.
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Moyer.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the consent agenda is approved.
Thank you. Okay, on to action items. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item E1?
E1, ordinance number 07-2024, an ordinance amending the town of Wellington municipal code pertaining to firearms on town property and determining an emergency with respect thereto.
Thank you. Mr. Dan Sapienza will present on this item. Mr. Sapienza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The ordinance in front of you, we've talked about a couple times with this board, most recently at the June 18th work session. This is an ordinance with regard to Senate Bill 24-131, which was adopted by the Colorado General Assembly this year, which went into effect on July 1st. Senate Bill 131 prohibits the carrying of firearms, whether concealed or otherwise, on a number of properties across the state. With regard to the town of Wellington, it applies to local government buildings where the chambers of the governing body are held, which is the Leaper Center. And it applies to any building in which the office of the chief executive is, which would mean the municipal services building. Effective July 1st, in those buildings, it is a state offense to carry a firearm, whether you have a concealed carry permit or not. The bill also includes, applies this prohibition to other areas, which include certain state buildings, certain school related buildings, as well as around polling places. But the purpose of the ordinance tonight is just with regard to those local buildings. So municipal services building and the Leaper Center. I'll note that Senate Bill 131 also prohibits carry of firearms in any building used for court proceedings. And as you know, Leaper Center is used for the town's municipal court, whether regular court sessions or we also have other hearings. So at any of those times, Senate Bill 131 would be in effect prohibiting the carrying of firearms. The new law has an option for the governing body of any local government to effectively opt out of the law for those buildings that it applies to. You could not opt out the Leaper Center during court proceedings, but if you so decided, you could opt out the Leaper Center at other times. Other communities that I've found so far, and this is so new that it's very hard to get any real good look across the state at who's doing what. Severance recently adopted an emergency ordinance to opt out of Senate Bill 131 for employees of the town, as well as elected officials of the town who have valid concealed carry permits. So sort of a limited opt-out of Senate Bill 131. Douglas County opted out any individual in a county building who has a concealed carry permit. So not perhaps the broadest opt-out, because again, this applies to concealed carry with permit or open carry. Based on the discussion that the board had at the June 18th work session, I put together kind of some options. And I wouldn't even say that these are the only options available to the board to consider with these ordinances, but I thought it'd be best to have kind of some examples of different routes that the board might be able to go based on the sort of different positions I heard at that meeting. I don't know if I got a real clear sense of any particular direction. So included here are 4 ordinances. 2 of those ordinances are emergency ordinances, with some language in there about why this might be an emergency, though if the board decides that it's an emergency, you'll need to discuss that on the record. We need a record of why the board determines it to be an emergency. And under the Wellington Town Code, for an ordinance to be adopted as an emergency ordinance, which means that it becomes effective immediately upon the mayor's signature, for it to be adopted, it needs a 3/4 vote of the board. 3/4 of this board of 7 is 5 1/4 members, so it requires a vote of 6 out of 7 members. So kind of as a threshold issue, there's a high requirement there. And again, we need a discussion on the record of why the board would determine that to be an emergency. But I thought I'd heard that sort of discussion among the board members that since this went into effect on July 1st, that quick action was perhaps desired by some. The other options that are in here are one that is what I would call the broadest opt-out of this bill. It effectively says Senate Bill 131 doesn't apply at all in town buildings, whether it's concealed carry or otherwise. Any individual can carry a firearm in those buildings. The other option that I presented here is kind of a more limited opt-out, offering any individual who has a valid concealed carry permit to carry firearms within Leaper Center and municipal service buildings at those times when we could opt out. So I took that option because I heard certain members of the board say, discuss the training requirements around concealed carry, saying, well, if they've gone through the training and they've got the permit perhaps. And so I thought maybe that was an option that I'd put in front of the board. Really, the direction from the June 18th work session was the board wanted to discuss this. So got some options here. If you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I know we've had a few discussions on this item in the past. And again, these are just 4 options. If the board has some ideas on a different option, we can always write an amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Trustee Moore. Trustee Meagan.
If we do the non-emergency, when would it go into effect?
That's a great question. I apologize. I should have covered that. Ordinance are becoming effective 30 days after publication. So 30 days, basically. July or August.
Trustee David.
No questions. Looking forward to public comment. Thank you.
Member Tim. Trustee Kim.
I'll wait till after public comments.
Trustee Teets.
I have some questions.
Sure.
So first of all, my questions start is I would like a better definition of the section B1, page 46 of 85.
Let me get to that page real quick.
Got it.
Option 3. Okay. B1.
So, yep, B1, and it starts at the number 2 or the first I instead of II. So, and it states, while municipal court is in session or while any law enforcement personnel, defense counsel personnel, or municipal court personnel are engaged in any activities in connection with municipal court proceedings, whether or not court is in session. So does that mean if you are here working on a court case and court is not in session, they can't carry?
That's the intent of that language, yes. As Senate Bill 131 says, any building or any portion of a building where court is held or any court proceedings. And because we needed to cover, I wanted to make sure it was covered by that. It's real hard to define. We do a lot of work in municipal court when we aren't necessarily on the record yet. The judge may be sitting in the room. Court work is being done. And so effectively, when this building is acting as a courthouse, and it's a pretty broad definition of that, but when this room is being used as a courthouse for court work, this would apply. That was the intent there.
Got it. My other question related to this is there is also a clause in the Colorado Constitution where this section of the CRS code goes against the Colorado Constitution when it states that no person's right shall be infringed upon. So that it could be an argument that the right would be infringed upon.
certainly somebody could argue, I would assume that Senate Bill 131 will be the subject of lawsuits. Today, effective July 1st, 2024, Senate Bill 131 is the law of the state of Colorado. If somebody contests it, perhaps that will overturn the law if the courts agree. But today, this is the law. So this is what we're going off.
And
Got it.
one thing real fast, correct me if I'm wrong, but this section right here is not something that we can change at this moment in time.
It's my understanding you can.
You're talking about section B2?
I'm talking about, yes, a court, yes.
No, B1.
Well, yeah, it would be B1.
The language in B1 is intended to be as clear as possible about the use of our building because we cannot opt out a building or a portion of a building that is being used for court proceedings. That is not an option that we have. The only thing that the town can opt out of is a building that houses the chambers. So we can opt out the Leaper Center, but as soon as the Leaper Center turns into a courthouse, we do not have the authority under state law to opt out. So no, B1 is language that largely mirrors Senate Bill 131. There is some slightly expansive language around court proceedings because I thought court proceedings itself was a pretty vague term, wanted to give it some more depth.
So you added the addition.
The language in Senate Bill 131 says a building used for a courthouse or a portion of a building with a use for court proceedings. Yeah. So.
Got it. So my generalized idea behind that is while I support I because it cannot be, I do not support II in that section as it is exceedingly broad and there is so much more that could go on during anywhere in the municipal Leaper Center. So I would be open to addressing the I, but I would not be open to addressing the II. So I would ask the II with the broad definition that wasn't listed in the.
So we cannot decide on B1I or II.
We can decide on II.
I could be rewritten.
II can be rewritten.
Yes.
Rewritten to say, while any court proceedings are ongoing.
Correct.
That vague determination, though, I feel is, the reason I used the language I have is to be a little more specific about the things that might encompass court proceedings. Because this building is used for a lot of
building,
things.
yes, because, okay.
So that was the intent here, but it can, Trustee Teets is right. I mean,
So what were you looking for there?
So while municipal court is in session, While municipal court is in session.
I would argue we needed to at least say court proceedings. I mean, it would need to say, well, municipal court is in session or court proceedings are ongoing, would be an option we'd have. The Senate Bill 131 uses the phrase court proceedings. If we need further discussion of this, I actually would recommend we go into an executive session to discuss, to receive legal advice on this issue.
I guess I would ask a question. Why would we want to make the language more broad? That seems counterintuitive of the goal you're trying to achieve.
No, it's actually so more broad wasn't needed. So if you look at the actual CRS, the Colorado Constitution, II is additional verbiage that is not in there. It has been added here, but it is not in there. So that's what I am looking for clarity on is because this was added.
The language that's in Senate Bill 131 is a courthouse or any other building or portion of a building used for court proceedings.
So
Used for court proceedings is a very broad term. So I was actually trying to give more definition to that term.
So, okay. So basically, if we went with what they wrote, we technically would not be able to opt out this building at all.
Yes, we would because it's only while
think-
court is in
I,
session.
you
It's
know,
only
I would
while
like,
court is in session.
I would like to go into executive session.
Mhm.
Second.
Miss, yep, right now. Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Your Honor.
Oh, yeah,
I
go
want
ahead.
a motion on that. Hold on. It'd be for the purpose of conferences with an attorney for the town pursuant to section 24-6-402-4B, CRS, for the purposes of receiving legal advice regarding definition of courthouse and or court proceedings and how that applies to Senate Bill 131, Senate Bill 24-131. The executive session will not be recorded and an attorney certification will be provided as required by CRS section 246402 2D.5 Roman numeral 2B, that the discussion in the executive session constitutes privileged attorney-client privileges.
Yeah, I would like the motion to go into executive session.
I second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Mayor Shosse,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
Yes.
trustee Moyer,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
trustee Daly,
No, the language is adequate and explained.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
The vote of 6 in favor, 1 against, the motion carries.
Thank you.
For those viewing virtually, the video and audio recording, live stream of this session will be ended temporarily. The stream will resume once the board has exited the executive session.
Regular meeting, time being 8:01 PM. Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please. Or I don't think I need a roll call. Yeah. No, we're good. Please proceed. Nothing
We're on board
further.
questions at the moment.
Okay,
Board
any
manager?
further questions from the board before public comment? No. Okay, I will now open it up for public comment. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak.
I'm an advocate for the broadest and soonest opt-out possible, which is on your list, option 3. We need to go to the emergency route because currently the state law is taking away our right to bear arms, and it needs to be rectified immediately. When you all took your oath of office, you swore to support the Constitution of Colorado. Let me read to you what it says. Article 2, Bill of Rights, Section 3. Inalienable rights. All persons have certain natural, essential, and inalienable rights, among which may be reckoned the right of enjoying and defending their lives and liberties. Note that self-defense of our lives is an alienable right. Founding Father John Adams said rights cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws. Thomas Jefferson said, government is to declare and enforce only our natural rights and duties and to take none of them from us. Constitution signer John Dickinson defined an inalienable right as a right which God gave to you and which no inferior power has the right to take away. Our founders believe that it was the duty of the government to protect inalienable rights from restrictions, limitations, and from being taken away completely. The Colorado Constitution makes it clear that self-defense is an inalienable right that may not be restricted by this governing body. The Colorado Constitution, Article 2, Section 13 says, the right of no person to keep and bear arms in defense of his home, person, and property shall be called in question. Therefore, wherever my person goes, I have the right to bring a gun. If my person goes to a court proceeding, I have the state constitutional right to bring my gun to protect my person where I go. I ask you to uphold your oath to support the state constitution by not restricting our right to self-defense, by removing the limitation of guns anywhere, especially in the court as it's written in the ordinance. Even though the state law says it's allowed, even though the lawyer says it's allowed,
even if the courts say it's allowed, it's prohibited by the Colorado State Constitution, which is the highest law of the state. I ask you, as trustees of this town, to follow the Colorado Constitution and not the Colorado laws that are in direct violation of the state constitution. Adopt option 3 after removing 1B, the part about not bringing guns to court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees, John Gator, Downtown Core. I want to first off thank you for taking this up quickly and not waiting to deal with this issue. My wife just went through this. You all took the same oath that I did back in 2020. Many of you took that just recently to uphold the order it goes in, the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Colorado, and the laws. There's a reason they go in that order. The highest power is the Constitution of the United States, then the Constitution of the State of Colorado, and then following that is our state laws. I understand that you are put in a hard position because our state legislatures have chosen to abandon their oath of office by passing the law that is in violation of our Constitution. That does not change your oath of office. Your oath is still to uphold the Constitution. I know 2 of you on this board gave your lives at risk to defend our country, and I appreciate you willing to do that. You're in a hard place as elected officials. I would also suggest that you look at the broadest opt-out. My reasoning is a little bit different. In the past of our country, we had how do you want to call it, 2 different levels of personhood. People with a certain skin color had certain rights, and people with my skin color did not have those rights. Our country has fought very hard to overcome that. When we start to say something where, oh, if you're an elected official or you're a town employee or you have this special training, you now have a better constitutional rights, we're actually going back and saying certain of our residents are more of a US citizen than others. And that is completely wrong. I think our country's come a long way in saying we're all equal. No one is better, no one has more rights or less rights. So I think any option that says, well, certain individuals because of training or their status or their position within the town have more constitutional rights than others is flat wrong. Please do not go down that route. And again, I would also say, I understand that the state law says, oh, you can't opt out these areas. That's a decision you'll have to make as a board of trustees. Are you going to follow the Constitution, or are you going to follow along with the state legislatures and say, well, they said we have to do this, so we're going to do that? That's a choice that you as trustees have to make. That's why you were elected. In the 4 years I was on the board, we never had to direct violation law against the Constitution of our state or of our national country for that matter. Unfortunately, you guys are having to deal with that, but that's what you were elected to do, is to make those hard decisions. As has been said many times in this boardroom, it's not about what you like, what you personally prefer, whether you carry a gun, whether you don't carry a gun, whether you like guns, whether you don't like guns. The Constitution isn't about what I like. It isn't about what you like. It isn't about what our politicians in Denver like. It's about rights that we are given as citizens of Colorado. Now, if the citizens of Colorado want to change our state constitution, that's something that can be done. The other thing too is a lot of times people say, well, we have the police to protect us. We don't need to bear arms. I've done ride-alongs in California and Colorado. Every time I've had a firearm on me, the officers have been grateful and said, if something happens to me, please help me. So I don't think that is an excuse to take away people's rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen Eifert. I live in the Knolls. And I also believe that we should uphold the Constitution of the state of Colorado. The Constitution of the state of Colorado is not the Constitution of Jared Polis. It's not the Constitution of Dan Sapienza. It is not the Constitution of Taylor Chelsea. It's not the Constitution of Karen Eifert. The state constitution is just that, and it's a document that must be followed and upheld by all of our elected officials, every single one of you. Am I the elected official? Heck no, because y'all know I could not do this and be nice to people at the same time. I can be nice to my family, and I can pretty much be nice to most of you all the time, but not always, because y'all can do this and I can't, plain and simple. But you know, we have the US Constitution and we have our state constitutions for a reason. And you as elected officials, when you were sworn in by the judge, I've been here for all of you guys except for Rebecca. I wasn't here when you first got sworn in. Have been sworn in to a judge, and that you promised that judge that you were going to uphold the Constitution of the state of Colorado. You weren't going to uphold what Governor Jared Polis said, or John Henry said, or Sarah Adams said, or whatever it is. It was the Constitution of the state of Colorado. And that may not be a very easy thing to do all the time, or the popular thing to do all the time, or the satisfactory thing to do all the time, but that is what you promised to do. And I do know, this is Sergeant Cherry, but the previous sergeant before Sergeant Charity, I think it was Sergeant Reardon. Yeah, I remember him saying to me one time that he knows and expects for every single person in Wellington to have a gun. He said, it's not like we live in the inner city and I'm going to look for every Tom, Dick, or Harry that looks suspicious to have a gun. He said, we live in Wellington. I know very well everybody has a gun here. He says, you know what? If somebody attacks me in the town of Wellington, I expect that the 15 cars that pass, all of them, every 15 cars that passes, everyone in that vehicle, there's someone in that vehicle, every 15 cars, that's going to jump out with a gun and draw that gun on the suspect who's trying to take my life and not let me go home and see my family. 15 individuals will stand up for me and pull their gun and make sure I go home to see my wife that night. It wasn't that he was afraid of anyone. I wasn't afraid that he was going to be attacked by all the rest of the citizens of Wellington. He knew in his heart that he would go home to see his wife that night because he had a sense of grounding in himself, that he knew that our town, everybody in our town would carry a gun and everybody in our town would stand with him to protect him so he could see his family once more. And I think it's still something that has to be done. We know that people have guns, and do I know everybody in this room has a gun right now? No. Do I know anybody out in town that knows how they have a gun or not? No. And neither does anybody in this room. I grew up in Los Angeles. We had huge metal detectors outside of a lot of buildings, including my schools. Elementary school on up. That was for a reason, because there were guns everywhere and there was gangs everywhere and there was bad people everywhere. I guarantee you, Wellington cannot afford all of the things that need to be put in place to find out if everyone has a gun or not. It's whether our deputies can see that or not. And it's not just because, well, I don't like Sally Joe. I think you should frisk her and see if she's got a gun or not. That would be illegal. That would be illegal search and seizure. So you've really got to think about this, because if you pass it, you must uphold it. You must have the proper tools to do so.
Thank you. All right. Are there any final questions from the board on this item? Do I have a motion?
I think we were hoping to have a discussion as the board members prior to any motion and but after public comment. So I was really expecting to have not questions being asked, but
Sure,
chance to have
sure.
comments. Is that
Yeah, that falls within the realm.
okay?
Trustee Cannon.
Okay, I'll kick it off. Why not? I've been a member of Wellington community for 7 years. I've worked closely with the town as the town manager and the past 3 months as a board member. Love this community. And I have to say that I've known at least 8 trustees who come to every board meeting. They have a concealed weapons permit. They bring their guns to this. No one would ever know that, except that it was confided to me over the years. And this goes back 7 years or more. But one of the things that's always been important to me is safety, public safety, which is one of the purposes of local governments. As a town manager, I have had to intercede several times throughout my 13-year career when when people come to the town hall for issues or discussions or to address certain things. And let's face it, not everyone is going to be pleased with whatever the decision a board of trustees or a city council will come up with. And emotions can sometimes run high, and there's been countless times, I'm talking dozens of times when I've had to actually step up and I don't use the word disarm, but simply de-escalate a contentious situation. Now, personally, I don't view this as necessarily the constitutional end of that, because on the constitutional end of that, what would happen is someone would challenge the law or the Senate bill. They would challenge that through the courts. I'm sure that that challenge would also be accompanied by certain amicus curiae briefs, friends of the court that would beyond that, because it ultimately does come to a constitutional question. In my opinion, it would be upheld within Colorado, even through the Colorado Supreme Court, but it would go to the U.S. Supreme Court and they'd throw it out. That's my opinion of what would happen. And when that happens, the Senate bill would go away. And that's how constitutional issues are resolved in our country. And I know that because I was a constitutional law scholar, and I understand how the court systems help firm and shape what those constitutional rights are for our citizens. But I do think of this as a public safety. This room right here is an environment where we're asking residents to come speak their mind to us. And we want them to feel welcome speaking their mind. We want them to understand that this is a safe place where they can come and make their statements. Now, the way these four options were written, and I understand about, concealed weapons permits. I've had concealed weapons permit. Like I said in our work session, I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I've got multiple guns. I shoot competitively. I reload my own ammunition. I have been handling firearms since I was about 6 years old, which is about 60 years now. And I would not want any kind of restriction at the state level or the federal level that would make me have to give up my rights to do that. But when I think about our town staff who are at that front counter there, having to deal with people who are emotions running high or whatever, I'm concerned about their public safety. And I do understand that to get a concealed weapons permit, there is a matter of training that you have to go through. It's like an 8-hour training. It costs money. They teach you how to safely handle the gun. They teach you how to defend yourself. They teach you, those fundamentals that, a responsible gun owner should know. Open carry doesn't require that. All it requires is a background check and at the gun store. And then you can, if there's a waiting period, you pass that, you've now got a gun. You can buy a holster, put it on your hip, and walk around Colorado because we're an open carry state. But open carry isn't just that gun there. We could have people walk in here with rifles slung over their shoulders, And I question whether or not that type of action in this building during board meetings and so forth like that would allow someone who's uncomfortable with that to truly speak their mind. So for me, I don't have any objections to someone who's gone through the training, has a concealed weapons permit, to bring that gun to a board meeting. I do have a problem with someone with an open carry or rifle, whether it's an assault rifle or a hunting rifle, it doesn't matter, just slung over their shoulder. Because if you saw somebody on the street walking towards you with a gun like that, you'd be a little intimidated. You wouldn't want to confront them. You wouldn't want to be in that situation. In fact, you might even turn off the street and walk away. Again, this room and this time together is for us to hear from all of our residents, to hear their concerns, and they need to feel free to voice their opinion. So that being said, and I know we had some discussion about maybe some language changes in the amendments and such like that. But that being said, the option one there from me, I do believe that this would constitute an emergency, mainly because the law was already in effect for 9 days. And this would allow people, we wouldn't have to wait until August the 9th for the ordinance to become effective. I would be in favor of supporting the option one, which will allow people with a concealed weapons permit, which is an indication of their training and that responsibility. And also the fact that it is concealed, and therefore, I'm sure all those people over the 7 years didn't know that there was armed people in the room, but they felt free to speak their mind. And I think we need to have that environment where people can come in, speak their mind, speak it freely. I mean, we only got 3 minutes, you know, on some of these issues that we come up with. I would like to see that, and I would also like to restrict open carry in our municipal services building because we have staff that are there that, again, have to deal with a sometimes confrontational subject. We do have Larimer County sitting in the back of the room. Personally, I'd rather see him sitting closer to the front. There's been times when I've seen in different board meetings in different organizations where things get very contentious, people standing up and confronting people and so forth, where you have to de-escalate these kind of situations. The fact that someone might have an open carry, doesn't know about the training and so forth like that, could be intimidating. So therefore, I would be more in favor of supporting option number one. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I don't think the Colorado General Assembly has done us many favors here, but I would agree with Trustee Meagan in the sense that if this is going to be argued about, it's going to be argued about at that level in the Colorado Supreme Court. What I would point out is that certainly I do support open carry and as well as concealed carry, and quite frankly, I don't believe that gun-free zones are of any use. I believe those are ripe opportunities for bad guys. But when it comes to municipal court in session, these types of things, these are not anything new. The Colorado General Assembly did not just pass a bill that says, well, you can't have a firearm in court. I'm not sure the last time anybody's been down to Larimer County Courthouse, but certainly if you're serving jury duty down there or anybody has a court proceeding down there, you cannot carry a firearm. And so this is not something new that the General Assembly has just decided recently. So that being the case, I would also point out an argument that if it's somebody suggesting that, and certainly this is not a municipal court case, but if the suggestion would be, for example, that the Aurora shooter should be allowed to carry a firearm into his court proceeding, I think that would be a pretty big error of judgment on our behalf. So personally, I would support option 4. I do not believe we have the votes tonight for an emergency ordinance, so I believe a non-emergency ordinance would be the appropriate course of action here, and I would agree that, and again, concealed or open carry, I believe, is the way that I would go on that.
Trustee Daly.
Always, I want to prioritize safety. And outside of this entire conversation, I do think that we have discussions to consider to improve safety of our facilities without infringing on our rights necessarily. So I do want to consider, especially for the safety of our staff and us and the residents and anybody who attends our meetings, just in general, any kind of safety measures that could be utilized. With that said, in this room, emotions do run high. I have absolutely felt at risk. I've felt my safety at risk in this room before. I've received personal threats, and it's scary and it's weird to volunteer for your town. And that is something that comes with the territory. This is not unique to Wellington. This is people serving in public office across everywhere in the world, not even the country, in the world. So that is something that you sign up for when you do this, unfortunately, but that's what happens. So with that said, I am an avid supporter of our Constitution and our Second Amendment. No questions asked. That is absolutely my stance and what I have committed to upholding. So with that said, I am also proud to carry concealed, and I am professionally trained in firearms, just so we know, and I do consistent training as well. And I think that that is what the responsible thing is to do for somebody who does carry. But that is my personal beliefs and what I do. I was compelled by public testimony this evening, and it definitely rang true to other comments I've heard from the public. I think that's a pretty consistent outcry and talking points that I've heard. The Senate bill is definitely outside of our hands. We cannot be here to contest that necessarily. That is not the role of this ordinance. That's not what we're doing. That's not our ability at this moment. So if you agree or disagree with the Senate bill, I understand, and I definitely hold compassion for your feelings and concerns, but that's not what we're doing right now. Right now, we are considering what is an option for us, and that is opting out of a specific portion that is legally available for us to do. So I know this has all these implications of the Second Amendment. That's not what we're discussing right now, unfortunately. I mean, that's a larger theme, but that's not a decision that we get to make in this room today. So given the testimony I received and other discussion that we've had, I do consider this an emergency based on the fact that we are Americans and we live by our Constitution and those amendments. But with that said, also, I am willing to and open to option 3 or option 4, depending on what we think would be successful to represent our community.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand.
I am open to either option 3 or option 4. I would love to see option 3 pass, but I don't know if we have the votes, and I definitely don't want to see it not pass. I wish the state had not done that. At least this is going to opt out of major problems that they created for us. I believe, just like most people believe, that gun-free zones are probably the worst things that happen out here. That's where all the criminals go. They know that's the easiest place to do their duty. So definitely, believe in the Second Amendment. And like so many people, I do have a concealed weapons. I've been shooting ever since I've been a young pup. And, I value that. Right that I got and the rights of the Constitution. And, like I said, I wish we could do it where we could, have it available wherever. But, and again, just like Trustee Mason said, you go down to the Larimer County Court, you go through gun metal detectors there, whether it's a gun, whether it's a knife or whatever. There's a lot of deadly weapons out there. And so, again, I come back in either 3 or 4. I would love to see 3 do it. I would love to see us vote so that would pass, but leave it at your discretion.
Thanks, sir. Trustee Moore.
I think everyone here tonight, all of my fellow trustees and the public, have made very compelling arguments. Absolutely. This is not a topic that I love. Prior to being elected, I've had conversations with some of you about gun-free zones and the implications of those. I also have been present in this room before being elected when I have seen a firearm used as an intimidation tactic during a heated discussion. I believe very strongly in people's ability to speak their voice, and absolutely agree with you that we should make this space a safe place for people to be able to do that. That being said, again, I hear you all and I believe you all have very valid points. So I would be in favor of an emergency ordinance. At this time, I'm not sure which one.
Thank you. Trustee Teets.
All right. So as it was explained earlier in public comment, we absolutely do have an option to say that we as a town are supporting the generalized idea that the Colorado Constitution and the United States Second Amendment Constitution. I swore an oath and I'm not going to vote for or support anything that does not follow through with that oath. I stood up here. My hand was also on a Bible while I swore that oath to say that I would not step on or infringe upon the rights of people to protect themselves. I am not allowed to choose where they want to protect themselves at. To all of those that open carry and all of those that conceal carry, I am extremely grateful to every single one of you that do, because I know I'm safer in a circumstance where someone has taken a course. I don't conceal carry. If I choose to open carry, I'm going to open carry because that is my given right in the US to do so. I don't need a piece of paper saying I can carry a weapon. Have I taken the class? Yeah, I have a friend that teaches it. I'm not going to get certified to conceal carry because I have a right to open carry. An intimidation tactic in generalized ideas, people can feel intimidated being around a weapon when they don't have knowledge of how to use it or how that gun can be used against them. So to say that someone is intimidated by being around a weapon, I used to be when I was young, and then I learned how to shoot. And I feel way more comfortable with those sitting in a room with me that carry than that don't carry, because gun-free zones, as Trustee Mason have said, there is statistics around what gun-free zones look like, and it's not great. But we did swear an oath as trustees. If you did not understand that oath and what came before, so it is the US Constitution. It is the state of Colorado Constitution. And in the Colorado Constitution, it specifically states that you are not allowed to infringe on someone's right to want to protect themselves. Now, if someone feels comfortable, they should not have signed up for this job. I can't even tell you. I'll send you the hate mail that I get on a regular basis. I'll send you the threats that not only me, but my children have gotten on a regular basis. So to say that we weren't aware of what we were getting into this situation, I knew exactly what I was getting into when I took on this role. I knew the backlash that I was going to get possibly, but I have found so much support from residents that I didn't even know knew who I was. So at the same time, I want to support town staff feeling safe, but that cannot be more important than who we represent and who was elected. We were elected by the people, and we swore to uphold the Colorado Constitution and the Constitution of the US. We do have the option to say that I would like to dismiss B. If the state of Colorado wants to come after us because we dismissed B in this situation, just as many people could come after us and sue us for infringement on their rights. And no, it won't come to us. It will go to higher courts. And every single gun regulation that I have seen lately go above to Supreme Courts, everything speaks for the gun owners' options. For gun rights, I have not seen anything come down from Supreme Court lately that treads on your ability to open or conceal carry a weapon. There is a good chance that we would lose that case, as a lot of people are losing those cases when they're trying to infringe on gun rights. So I'm comfortable, and I would like to make a motion to bring forward this ordinance amending the Town of Wellington Municipal Code pertaining to firearms of the town property and determining an emergency with respect thereto. But I would like to remove section B1 out of this, or alter the language that it states it shall not be a violation, because we are allowed to write our own ordinances here. I am not comfortable treading on someone's rights and you guys say you don't feel you don't want to tread on someone's rights, but the definition is not alterable to us. Those rules are already written. We don't get to say, I'm not going to tread on your rights. Maybe just this one area where we're going to do a clause that says you can't. I get it. Emotions in courts can fume. We had this discussion beforehand, but if this is something where there is an option to remove that, that is my motion that I would like to make. If it's seconded, great. I would love to have someone actually support the Constitution and say that it is an infringement of someone's rights if you want to limit anything related to that Second Amendment. And that's US and Colorado. So I would not feel comfortable voting for much of anything else other than saying that I'm not going to infringe on anybody else's rights.
Thank you. Does Trustee Teet's comments change anybody's outlook on what they would or would not support?
I'm just curious, Trustee Teets, were you considering that amendment based on option 3?
Option 3, but get rid of B?
Yes, option 3, but get rid of B.
Okay, well, I might recommend a different amendment. So depending on how we moved forward, I would recommend that we did the amendment that Trustee Mason may have prepared instead. So as a consideration for what our motion might be.
Okay. Trustee Mason, do you have anything to say further after Trustee Teet's comments, Trustee Daly's comments?
No, and I'm not sure, is there a motion on the floor
No,
currently?
there is not a motion on the floor currently. I am continuing deliberation to see if there's any further comments or direction from the board before a motion is made. I have not made my piece yet either.
I would not support opting out of the part 1 or 2 there. My amendment would be an amendment to exclude court fines paid at the municipal services building. So if you came in and were paying court fines at the municipal services building, you would be authorized to open or concealed carry there. Otherwise, I am in support of the language as presented. Option 3, to be clear.
Okay. So I'm in favor of option 3. I could go with the amendment or without. One thing I want to make very clear is if this is an emergency ordinance and once again would require 6 votes to pass if it was going to happen. I want to make that very clear. Serious subject. So at this point, is there anybody that would like to make a motion?
I have a question before we do that. Would it be amicable to remove a few more items or discussion of, so my concern comes is anytime there's a defense counsel personnel, the municipal court personnel, or anyone engaged in any kind of municipal court proceeding at any other building in this town, you will not be able to open or conceal carry. So my concern comes is, would we be amicable to saying that if we're altering, removing, paying town fines, would we be amicable to looking at removing defense council personnel, municipal court personnel? You can't just say, oh, you're allowed to open carry if the clerk is accepting payments, but you're not allowed to open or conceal carry if the town attorney is having a meeting with defense counsel. So
are you asking if we would amend II?
yes. And then I could be
But
amicable.
You'd be amicable by amending II,
I would be.
leaving B and BI, but getting rid of II. Is that correct?
Yes, if that's what gets this moved forward, yes.
And that would be option 3.
I think that that puts us in contradiction of the state Senate bill, and then that is not, would not accomplish what we're trying to do. So that's my feedback on that, and I would not recommend it.
Again, I is the one that says while court is in session, so entirely removing II. There are court proceedings that occur when, not just when court is in session. So this gets back to the discussion. If the desire is to remove all of that language around defense discussions, I would say replace 2 with or court proceedings. But I think that again, I was trying to be more specific with this than that. I think that does create quite a bit of ambiguity. But when court is in session does not encompass the entirety
Okay.
of court proceedings that the state law applies.
So amending B and then I would be now while municipal court is in session or proceedings are occurring or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, the rough idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I, while municipal court is in session, or 2, while any court proceedings are in session, excluding, and I think excluding receipt of payment by the court clerk or receipt of payment by the court clerk outside of a scheduled court proceeding, something like that. But as I mentioned before, when court is in session is from the
It's
gavel
just when
to
the gavel to gavel.
Like, and it's, municipal court, while the judge sits down at 3 o'clock, court begins at 2 o'clock, and court proceedings really begin at least as early as 1 o'clock. That's when all court personnel get to this building, set up court, and that's when we start seeing defendants, having the bailiff here. And so it's, while court is in session, which is covered by I, is pretty narrow.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Trustee Daly?
I'd be fine with using for II court proceedings as that matches the state Senate bill with the exception.
So again, with the II, that was added. That was not a match. So that's my cause of concern. I would be okay with having I and then adding II to address, but we wouldn't even have to address the altering. So when the town clerk is accepting funds, we wouldn't even have to alter that because it is while municipal court is in session.
The state law, Senate Bill 131 says court proceedings. It says any building or any portion of a building used for court proceedings, which is a very broad term, and that needs, so while court is in session does not encompass what is prohibited by Senate Bill 131.
So in other words, the Senate bill, as you're saying, it simply refers to court proceedings. It doesn't necessarily use the language court is in session. So we could get rid of I and II and just simply say during court
And
proceeding.
that language would mirror Senate Bill 131.
And it would mirror it exactly. Okay, and we could still throw in the language that exempts.
You could,
With the
yeah.
exemption of, payments made to the municipal court clerk at the municipal services building.
Certainly.
No, because then that would remove any ability to carry here at all. So that kind of defeats the purpose.
I'm not following you on that.
So, because if you read to carry a firearm within any municipal building or portion of a municipal building, so it will be a violation, including adjacent parking areas used for municipal court proceedings. So this building is used for municipal court proceedings, town hall is used for municipal court proceedings, which means no weapons at any time would be allowed to be carried.
Well, I think what my intent was, and I appreciate the clarification you gave me on that. Thank you. Sure. Trustee Tees. The one option addresses the municipal building, the municipal services building, and not your town hall. The other one is the one that you can't opt out of, according to the Senate bill, which has to do with municipal court. So, and it talks about municipal court proceedings. I think the language of excluding the LEPR or the municipal services building from the court proceedings language would.
It would only cover the municipal
It
building.
would only cover this building during court proceedings. Is that correct?
So to exclude anything happening at the municipal services building.
Yeah.
If that's your
But
desire,
that,
then.
that
then
would
just-
not cover the boardroom though, correct?
The municipal services building is the.
Right.
other one, yeah, so it wouldn't cover this building.
So in other words, under that line of reasoning, the only thing that would be prohibited was in this building, the Leaper Center, during court proceedings.
Yes, only during the time of court proceedings, not always. That's how it's written, is to indicate that it's only during court proceedings would be the consideration. And just so if anybody hasn't read it, there would be notice on the building of the times when and when not. It wouldn't be a surprise of, I wonder if not. There would be notice on the entrance of a building. So it's not a surprise.
So amending B1 to state only while being used for court proceedings.
Yeah.
Excluding town hall during payment of some sort.
No, you don't even have to give an explanation. You just simply exclude town hall, or the municipal services bill.
Will you exclude all public municipal buildings? Because all public
It
municipal.
shall
buildings
be
will
a violation to carry a firearm within any municipal.
I feel like we went through these explanations already, and that's kind of why we got advice. So
Only during
I think
court
this has
proceedings.
great value in having conversation. So we learned a lot today about being respectful of other people and their conversations,
Let's,
views, and
let's-
ideas.
Okay.
So if the goal is to mirror the language, it says used for municipal court proceedings, and then there's section I. So then I would strike section I and double I. So the way it would read is, shall be a violation of CRS 1812-1053, 1C to carry a firearm within any municipal building or portion of a municipal building, including adjacent parking areas used for municipal court proceedings.
Only while.
Yeah, used for municipal court proceedings. I mean, taking I and I out ends with used for municipal court proceedings while they're occurring.
While in session or something, or
Yeah.
No.
Uh,
talking about-
No, I'd still, while court proceedings are occurring,
yeah.
something like that.
But we need to also restrict that language and that language that trustee Mason talked about to exclude the municipal services building.
If,
No, it does that. It does that naturally
Right,
within the
that's it.
verbiage. Correct?
so you want to exclude all of the municipal services building? Is that what's being discussed right now is
I mean,
municipal services
We want to
building?
protect both buildings from being subject to the state
right.
in this case.
Part of, I mean, the discussion around the municipal services building was around basically other non-court action taking place there that was related
Correct.
to court proceeding,
Correct.
correct? So effectively writing this, and then we'd have to limit court proceedings and any sort of court action. I don't have to have any meetings related to that here in this building. Is that?
But
Or you
more
could
of a
spe- or
policy.
You could
I mean, is that the
specifically
dis-
say that, municipal court proceedings at the Leaper Center.
Well, no,
No, only while municipal court is in session. Proceedings while municipal court is in session.
I'm not
That
happy
language-
with that language.
That language, again, doesn't work, the while it's in session part, because it's not just from the gavel to the gavel. Court is a large process, and we couldn't allow guns at the beginning of the court process where people come in and check in and begin kind of the intake with court and allow a gun at that time, but then not allow a gun at a later time. I mean, that court is bigger than just when court is in session. And that's the issue. Mr. Mayor, I think rather than write this on the fly, why don't we, it's
yeah,
almost 9 o'clock here. What if we took a recess and we'll draft some language that I think encompasses what I'm hearing here?
that would, yes, that would be great. We're going to take a 10-minute recess.
Recess doesn't do anything for me. Spirited discussion.
You not need it?
The amendment I've drafted here is to replace the all of B1 that's in your packet. And I've made a couple changes here that I think reflect really what the board was talking about. And the first change was the beginning of B1 as written in your packet starts with it shall be a violation of CRS. And I think there's been some confusion about whether this creates a new offense. And so replace that language. And then I also replaced language to define that municipal court in the Leaper Center or a successor building used for municipal court sessions. The idea there being, heaven forbid, the Leaper Center burns down and we have to have court. And we move court over to the MSB temporarily, won't necessarily want to rewrite our ordinance to cover that, but it's the location used for those sessions while the building is used for court proceedings. So the intent is this building, while this building is used for court sessions, or if this building can't be used for court sessions and it has to be moved, this also wouldn't apply there. So I'll read you the amendment in its entirety. Happy to reread it as many times as you need.
Please.
B1, nothing herein shall permit the carrying of a firearm in violation of CRS section 1812-105.31C within the Leaper Center or any successor building used for Wellington Municipal Court sessions, including adjacent parking areas, while such building is used for court proceedings. So that, I think, covers what the latest discussion. I don't have to read that again if you decide. Go ahead.
So if I get this right, you identify court sessions and then you expand that later to court proceedings. What if we just said court proceedings instead of separate?
There was the question of whether, there has been a question raised of whether the municipal court clerk operating out of the municipal services building, she does a number of tasks for court and accepting payments, drafting motions, accepting continuations. So there's a question of whether those kind of clerical duties that were done completely separate from a court session over there, whether those were court proceedings. And I think that's a fair question. And so I'll read this again real fast.
Yeah, please.
And then I'll highlight that point. Nothing herein shall permit the carrying of a firearm in violation of CRS 1812-105.31C within the Leaper Center or any successor building used for Wellington Municipal Court sessions, including adjacent parking areas, while such building is used for court proceedings. So what I've done there is I've said Leaper Center or a successor building used for court sessions. And that defines the geographic location, whether it's this building or another building that needs to be used. So that's the place, including adjacent parking areas, mirroring Senate Bill 24-131. And then the last clause says, while such a building is used for court proceedings, then adding that temporal element so that it only applies during the court proceedings. So it wouldn't apply to this building, which is geographically identified at times when court proceedings were going on. That's the intent there.
Thank you.
So I'd like to clarify that this is only while court proceedings, not including what Verity does in her job listing at the other building.
Again, well, that's the intent here. Yes, it says at the
Got
Leaper
it.
Center or another building or a successor building used for general or for municipal court sessions, meaning we're here at the Leaper Center. This is where court is held. It may be the case in the future that municipal court has to be somewhere else, or we build a nice big courthouse and that's where it is held. So it would only be this building or another building where court is held for court while court proceedings are taking place, while such building is used for court proceedings. So yes, only
I'm
during that time.
amicable to that.
Yes.
Love it.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. And I'm trying to follow the language that you recommended and how to make that motion. My motion is for option 3 with the change to section 1B,
And B1,
excuse me, B1. I mentioned section 1B.
1B, yes, you're correct.
1B1 is what it is.
Mm.
And if,
No.
do you need me to
It's
read the
B1.
language?
Would you like me to
B1,
draft a
it's
motion?
B1.
perhaps? Would you like me to state a
Yeah.
motion and then you can
I'd love.
So moved that one? All right.
Yes.
All right. Get to the right version. Move to adopt ordinance number 07-2024, an ordinance amending the Town of Wellington Municipal Code pertaining to firearms on town property and determining an emergency with respect thereto. Option 3, amended to replace subsection B1 to state, nothing herein shall permit the carrying of a firearm in violation of CRS section 1812-105.31C within the Leaper Center or any successor building used for Wellington Municipal Court sessions, including adjacent parking areas, while such building is used for court proceedings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
trustee Daly,
Yes.
trustee Moyer,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand, trustee Teets,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you unanimously, and the ordinance with the stated amendment is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for new item E2?
Resolution number 35-2024, resolution of Town of Wellington, Colorado, amending capital projects fund to parks project allocations for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you. Mr. Billy Cooksey will be presenting to us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. Thanks for having me. So in the fiscal year 2024, the Parks and Recreation budget had an approved $50,000 for a capital improvement project line item for the purchase and installation of the ADA fishing dock at Wellville Park. Subsequently, the town staff had successfully been awarded a grant from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Fishing is Fund for the amount of $40,215. The Parks and Rec Open Spaces and Trails Advisory Board, or PROST, voted to approve the request for the Parks and Rec manager to come in front of the Board of Trustees to reappropriate a portion of the $40,215 that was saved via the grant to 2 other projects on their priority list, moving them up into the fiscal year of 2024. These 2 projects would be the renovation of the current Griffin Greens disc golf course into a 9-hole multi-use disc golf course, which would be disc golf and foot golf, as well as a fenced open area dog park in Wellville Park that would be put in the area that would be kind of vacated by the removal of the disc golf on the east side of I-25 in Wellville Park. The estimated cost for both projects is $32,950, and this information is in the packet. It was originally on consent. At this time, I would just like maybe a little bit of direction, how you'd want me to proceed with any more information you would need. I can go through the presentation, or I'm open for discussion or questions regarding this proposal.
Start with Trustee Teets, and she pulled it from consent.
Yes, I did pull it from the consent. I did send a heads up and kind of stress to Patti what my concerns were. I want to stress I am not against the frolf course. I am not against the dog park. What I would like to do is there's a few things that I am concerned about related to this. One of those things is we'll start with the dog park. So we are putting in a dog park, which actually is a dog run. So because there'll be, correct me if I'm wrong, no shade structure, nowhere to sit, and no water for dogs.
Yes, so the intent, well, let me say this. We do have extra park benches where we could amenitize immediately. Those are at our park shop that are waiting to be used out in the park system. So that could be solved with what we, about an 8 dogs can run on the east side because that area or the east side has been identified as a space that does not have any areas legally where dogs can be off leash in park space. So in the spirit of equitability, we would want to bring that, and that's been a priority for a while. As well as getting back to what you're saying with the amenities, We would like to do what we would consider like a pilot project and let the community around decide how we would want to amenitize it, whether they would want to bring in potentially shade, I would assume. There is the option to have water in the future. There's a tap right on the corner of Halleck and McClelland where we could bring water in. We would have to put a backflow and drive a line over. But if in the future that's what we wanted to amenitize with, that's something we could do. As well as maybe the community around would want to amenitize with, dog features such as running ramps or tubes to go in, make it that kind of a dog park where they can have an agility course, give the option of the community around there to describe what they would like it to use. I will say, in the past, I have managed dog parks that have nothing in them. And a lot of people do like that because it is a legal space to have your dog just run. It's not necessarily a fetch park, but this park would be fairly close. We could get it to about 25,000 to 30,000 square feet if we stay outside of the floodway. If it's in the floodplain, we're fine to do it there. In the packet, you can find where those lines were drawn by engineering. So basically just giving the community options. It would be constructed by 4x4s as well as top timbers and 14 gauge wire. So that's very common with certain dog parks.
Got it. So my concern around this is we were going to be removing an amenity such as the remaining sections of the golf course and putting in a dog run where people could let their dog run. My concern with that is the classification of a standard water is a livability thing for animals, humans, to have a fountain where if you're in 100-degree heat and there's no grass over there, correct? It's just dirt and weeds.
Native.
Got it. So when you have those dogs running around, there is no shade and there is no water. The one thing I would like to consider if we're moving forward with this, there was an additional $7,265 left over. I would like to see at least water and shade and the park benches that they have be something that we approve for this. I don't want to take away amenity and give half an amenity to the east side. So that's kind of where I look at it as our dog park over on the other side. We have water, we have shade. We would be providing an equitable, exact kind of mirror image of what we are providing on the west side to the east side. Water, unless they want their dogs running over to the ponds that have blue-green algae that bloom all over in them, and then we're dealing with sick dogs because that's where they're going next when they're running out in the heat. This is something that we can say, and I mean, I'm not saying that we don't provide options later with the tubes and items like that and get feedback, but the standard life sustainability things, shade and water, I mean, if someone were to catch me with my dog in my backyard and it didn't have shade or water, would I get into trouble?
There's potential, yes.
So, I mean, that's something that I would like to address with this evening is looking at just doing that backflow headed over there and some kind of shade structure with those park benches you guys have. At least that way it's equitable on each side of the interstate and we don't tell someone, oh, it's coming eventually. I would expect if I go to a dog park, I at least have water and somewhere to sit and shade. Somewhere to sit was a huge debate last year, if I remember right. And we finally got benches over on the other side for people to sit in that fenced area where the ponds are.
Ponds, yeah.
Yes. So that's my ask related to this. If you guys would be amicable to allowing some of those excess funds to be applied towards that. So that's my ask on that part. Related to the golf course, I think it's an amazing idea. I have absolutely nothing against it. I do ask you guys regularly to please update the existing infrastructure we have before transitioning and looking at, adding more to our already probably over $1 million needs for our parks to fix and update them. My thing is I don't want to approve this without realizing that we need to provide 9 holes for ADA accessibility, not 3 holes, possibly 5 holes. That's demonstrating to our community, while we might be thinking momentarily about accessibility for people with disabilities, you only get a percentage of what the rest of the community gets to enjoy. So, and this was a very big talking point, and one of the reasons it came back is because I had a concerned resident with, we swear to uphold the ADA laws and rules, and during reconstruction or improvements, you have to come into compliance as a town. When you do that reconstruction, you can't just pick, I'm going to only do 3 of 9. You can't pick, I'm going to only do 5 of 9. You have to make it accessible to all. And one of the things, and this can be brought up at a different time for more detail, I want to challenge all of our trustees. I will get people to donate wheelchairs. And I would like you to try and navigate some of our parks and open spaces in a wheelchair and on grass when it's wet from sprinkler systems. If you haven't tried to navigate that, I mean, you have to have pretty strong upper body strength, and that can come at a later date. But I think it would be a fun experience to see what these people, they don't have a choice with how they live. These people have permanent disabilities, and if we can do something where we're making it equitable or equal, I mean, it shouldn't even be we're going to do 3 to include people with disabilities. It should be, this should be planned because it's required to by title law to be planned for accessibility with people in that community. So I would like to, and if it is an issue of cost and we need to look at additional funds for all of the accessibility things, I would like to look into grants to do that and make that a possibility. Or if there is an additional option to allow additional funds to come out of fund balance, we do set aside, $20,000 a year for ADA accessibility and other items. I don't think that it would be appropriate or right to move forward with this, saying that we're only going to allow 3 holes to be ADA accessible.
I'm sorry, if I may, I feel like this is not what we're here to discuss. I think
No,
but what's on the agenda is the appropriating of capital for these projects. I'm not comfortable micromanaging how a department prioritizes. I hear what you're saying about ADA. I think it's very important. I think your idea of trying out wheelchairs is great. I've done it before. It's very limiting. I completely understand that, but I really believe that that's not what we're here to talk about right now with this item.
it is, because they would need appropriated funds to be able to do this, correct?
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, and can I speak to that point? as
Yes.
Well, so originally when we had Avery Jenkins, who is the course designer, come out, we did an initial walk, and actually at the same, can I bring up someone also from Disc Golf Park right now? He you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Reed. I am president of Northgate Disc Golf Club, which was founded in Wellington, Colorado. Additionally, I'm a PDGA number 69822 for professional disc golfers. I am a licensed official in disc golf, and I am also the official liaison for Discmania, which is in your own backyard and is one of the biggest disc golf companies. They would be the ones providing this course.
Yeah, so along with multiple people from Discmania as well as Disc Golf Park, the subsidiary that will be helping build the course, we walked it, and their original assessment was basically, can we do 9 holes over here in the way that we would build a course? And the goal was to just say, at a minimum, how many would we need, or how many could we do ADA? The goal would be to do all of them, absolutely. And John can speak more to how they do that, how the disc golf club runs that, and really with, like I said, I'll let him speak, but with their app and how they design the course specifically for the anybody with a disability or a need in a course like this. I will say that the USDA does have an accessibility guideline for outdoor recreation and trails. And within those guidelines, there are, and I don't want to sound like I'm making an excuse for this. I promise that we want to do the best that we can for ADA, but there are exceptions. And with the usable space that we have to put the 9 holes in, there is a chance that some of them won't be able to be accessible because of the compliance with the technical requirements, and fundamentally would have to alter the function or purpose of the facility. That means we would have to change grade or slope on a drainage that has been engineered already that we use for the space for a disc golf course. And that's something that we can't do. And that is an exemption in the ADA guidelines. But I don't want to use that. It's just a possibility that we might not be able to get to 9 holes because of how the grade and slope is, as well as there's some drainage issues because it is along the Box Elder Creek. So those are things that we would have to decide as we're moving through with building the course. But the goal is to make it as ADA compliant as we possibly can. So, if you want to speak to that, John.
So our club is actually very, very inclusive of people of different abilities. We've got multiple members that have different physical and mental ability struggles that we have really, really worked hard to include them in our activities. Wellington in the past has been one of the more difficult courses for us to bring these people to. That creates a lot of issues. This is an opportunity for us to make it more safe for them. So as you had mentioned, an equal or as close as we can to opportunity, there's an application that disc golfers use called UDisc, and in it we can set different layouts. So in those layouts, maybe they would be only able to utilize a handful of those baskets. However, we would give them a different layout that would have them use them multiple times from different spots. So they're still getting a challenging and fun and exciting experience. We're just being able to give them that opportunity in a safe environment. Additionally, this whole thing started out of safety because when we had our initial discussion, we brought up the idea of removing the east side baskets. It's just far too overutilized. I actually brought my discs for no reason, but when a lot of people think Frisbee golf, they think it's that disc that you got free at the bank when you open an account. These discs are hard, they're solid, and a experienced disc golfer can throw a disc between 350 and 500 feet. So if you catch one in the temple, it's gonna hurt. And so this whole thing started with the idea of safety. So when we're talking about our ADA compliance, that's definitely something we think about. These exemptions that have been brought up are definitely utilized in other towns, and there's courses that have extreme challenges, borderline rock climbing, and we want to find some way for both to exist. As a town with only one course, it can be pretty alienating to play the course here at times. It's very challenging. And people who are just starting out in the sport get pretty soured out because they lose discs immediately. As mentioned during the CDOT conversation, it gets pretty breezy up here. So we're trying to find ways to do that. But along with that ADA compliance, we want to make sure that this course is something that everyone can use, from an experienced disc golfer to someone who's going out on their first trip.
And do you think with the funds that have been allocated that you will be able to accomplish the ADA aspect to the fullest?
Yeah, and we also have minor park improvement funds that we could use for this. That was approved larger as asked from the pros last year and approved by the board. That line item went up, and this would be a perfect opportunity to use some of that to make sure that it is compliant with building soft trails and any sort of amenities that we would need to add to that area, because it would be improving the park in general and making the park itself more accessible, as well as adding to this amenity.
Okay,
So that'd be an operational cost that we would also need to use, but as proposed and as the course is proposed in the packet and proposed to us by the disc golf builder, that is a pretty hard cost as far as what it will cost the town.
Got it. And it doesn't dip into the 40,000 that you're putting as far as the ADA accessible bridge at that park?
No, that is a capital project for the future.
For next year?
Yes, for next year. Yeah, absolutely not.
Got it. Okay. Got it. And those honestly were my only questions, was just making sure that we were looking at all routes, and the accessibility was a big thing to some of our residents. I will say I had a chance to meet a member because I actually rode the entire course. I haven't played your course, but I rode the course the other night and saw how much I don't know if I call it dead grass or native grass or whatever. It was very dry. Yes, it was very dry, very dusty, and it definitely, it has gone by the wayside for an extended period of time. You can tell by looking at it. The basket seemed in decent repair, but again, I've never played, so I can't tell you exactly what that looks like. They looked like baskets, they had chains, and people were throwing discs into it. So I will say the signage, when I did stop and ask the family, I wanted to know what they felt, and they were newer into the sport and were just starting into it, and said that the signage was one of the biggest things that they were struggling with when they were walking through. And I saw that it's in there
Yeah,
for
it
the
is in there,
updated signage. I did.
And that would be
Yep.
done after the course has been designed, so it would be up to date with every
Correct.
pin location and every possibility, as well as, I would hope, the ADA loops as well on those.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to speak a little more. So of course, it's on.
The signage concern was built off of us continuing to try to be adaptable to the situation. The initial course had 3 additional holes on the far east side past that park. Those were removed when houses came in because we don't want to hit houses. And then we had more holes removed because we didn't want to houses. And then we had more holes removed because we don't want to hit that gazebo.
Mm-hmm.
And now, honestly, we just want to get rid of the east side. But what that did is that caused huge issues with our signage.
Mm-hmm.
The reason we all play disc golf is because we're too broke to play real golf. So we really can't afford to throw a ton of money at like big things like that just quickly. So
No, and that totally makes sense. So that was one of those things, is they said that the major things that they would like to see is the greens kept up better as far as the irrigation and dryness goes, because we were covered in grasshoppers when we were out there. And they also wanted to see the porta potties kept in better condition. So that was one of the main asks from your future Frolf community, since they're newbies to the sport. But yeah, I don't have anything against this. I just wanted to make sure that the residents that came and spoke to me about it, that their voice was also heard in all of this.
You know, I just believe that the spirit of this is to get more families out there, as opposed to people who are disc golfing as a hobby or a semi-profession. We want to get people out there that really have come into that community. There's so many young families and people of all ages and abilities. We want them to be able to experience the fun.
Trustee Kim.
Thank you. Thank you for presentation as well, and thank you as well. I live about a block away from Wellville Park, and it's always enjoyable when I see people out there throwing the disc golf. And yes, I've got a couple of dogs, and having a dog park over there is also important. And I was going to pull this from the agenda as well, because my questions are more on a fundamental area. I have a copy of the park's CIP, and the $50,000 there for the ADA fishing pier was really the only thing that was mentioned out there. There was no mention of a 5057 mini golf park improvements or a 5058 dog park in the next 5 years. It was never identified. And I understand that Prost may have a list of priorities, kind of a wish list, whatever. And I'm not sure of the procedures it was taken to do community surveys and so forth like that to get there.
Yes.
But the budget is a board of trustee responsibility, not necessarily an advisory board to the board of trustees. So my concerns are that as you're written there, you want to offset the $50,000 that was budgeted and identified in the CIP and approved in appropriations for the current budget, and redistribute that to make new appropriations. But I don't see a corresponding reduction in that $50,000 as well. Now, the consent agenda had another item on there that it was dealing with water fund. They took basically a non-essential identified capital improvement project and said, we'd like to just abandon that one for this year and use this money for these logic controllers. And I get that, because now you can capitalize on maybe something that's been identified and not essential, put it to something that is essential. And I understand that. I'm more concerned that we're bypassing the budget, the capital improvement planning process through this request. It hasn't, in my opinion, been vetted as well as we go through the budget process. We do have in the CIP $80,000 for park master planning in 2026. And quite frankly, I would rather see the funds from the ADA bridge, that 50,000, whatever that balance is, the $7,000 or $10,000, excuse me, $7,000 difference. I'd rather see that $40,000 go toward a park master plan that we can schedule in 2025, because, and I've said this before, parks is a science to some degree. You know, you have to understand, you know, what the community needs. There's calculation that says, okay, this is the size of park we need based on the amount of park space that we have within a community and so forth. And a park master plan becomes then your capital improvement plan going forward. So I'm reluctant to, and I'm not saying these are important, because I think the disc golf is a great amenity for the town. And I think the need for a dog park on the east side is also very essential. But to kind of do this on the fly, where we're thinking, oh, let's add this, let's add this, let's add this, to me, doesn't follow a plan. It's just kind of like, ooh, we found some money, how are we going to spend it? I've never been that kind of person. You know, I've never was that way when I was managing an organization. And I don't want to be that kind of a person as a trustee as well. And again, I appreciate all the work that the Prost is doing. I think that's a great organization. And I think they've got the community's interest in their heart. And I think that these would be great amenities. But again, it's a matter of when the CIP process is approved, it's the Board of Trustees that says, here's our priorities this year, next year, for the next 5 years. And we're kind of circumventing that process right now. You know, so to me, I would rather see more research on this, because you brought up some great points about accessibility, and there's questions about whether or not we can make it truly accessible. There's questions about the amenities at a dog park. And again, we're trying to do this on the fly. A parks master plan will identify that for you. It will lay that out, and you can then take that and make priorities on how you're going to spend those scant resources. Because from my experience, parks and recreations typically gets a lower amount of resources than something like streets or police services or whatever, you know. And I don't want to see that happen. I'd rather see that master plan so that we have a plan going forward saying, okay, we know we need this here. We've engaged the community, and they've given us the input we need to understand what size and what amenities we need at this dog park, and what do we need to do for the golf, the disc golf course as well. Again, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying these aren't important and they wouldn't bring value to the community. I'm more concerned about us maintaining our role as a Board of Trustees and setting those priorities, setting those appropriations, and setting those plans for the future and the betterment of the entire community. That's my position on that. So thank you for giving me some time to talk about that.
Trustee Mason. Or Mayor Pro Tem, sorry.
Well, thank you, Trustee Cannon. I do think you brought up some pretty valid points there. However, I guess I'm not maybe convinced that this would not be included as part of the Parks Master Plan. Obviously, we don't necessarily know yet, but I would suggest that I think very likely this would be included as far as a Parks Master Plan. I do also want to point out there is a very significant 45% discount on this particular course to the tune of $20,000. I suppose I would be maybe somewhat concerned that I don't know that offer would maybe be extended to us in the future, especially if, you know, we shoot this down and we would have to do, you know, maybe consider the exact same thing in 2026, but then have to pay $20,000 more for it. So I think this is a heck of an opportunity. I think the grant that was provided to us for the ADA fishing dock is one thing, but you know, we've got an opportunity here to give back some additional amenities, especially to that east side, which I think is very much lacking. And so I would be remiss if we I think we should capitalize on this now.
Thank you, Member Dunn. Trustee Daly.
Some of the comments, Trustee Cannon, I do want to acknowledge just in kind of in retrospect, considering some of your comments is during interviews for Prost members for advisory board, one of the specific questions that we ask them is if they are comfortable in making budget recommendations to the Board of Trustees. So that's something that we specifically task them with, actively asking them to please give us recommendations for the budget. So I do want to note that that is something it's part of, even in the application process, that is known and welcomed and celebrated within that group, that they get the opportunity to advise the Board of Trustees on all things park, recreation, open space, and trails. So I do want to acknowledge that too. And then historically, PROS has also made input and suggestions for CIP projects, including the fishing docks. So that is a recommendation that was initiated and then pursued and then found more opportunities for grants. So like a $40,000 grant to offset that cost that came from a similar method and recommendation from Prost. So I do want to just acknowledge those two pieces. I definitely want to celebrate and say thank you so much for pursuing and getting this grant, $40,000. That's no joke. That's amazing. The potential of being able to use the same money that we've considered to improve recreational activities for those who would benefit from a dock, to now extend that to people who would now also benefit from a dog park and also benefit from improvements to the discourse with a similar amount of money, I think is amazing. Not only that, the potential with these, I always worry that we limit the functionality and brilliance of our staff by operating within a very, very narrow direction, when in essence, really, we have charged them to pursue certain tasks based on strategic planning and comprehensive planning. So when an opportunity that aligns with both potentially becomes present at such a remarkable discount and with multiple community partners at the same time, I would love to celebrate the opportunity that this is being brought to us as an opportunity to reallocate money that is already built into and considered within our budget. So that's my reasoning behind it. But within the comprehensive plan, first and foremost, within our strategic plan, we talk about improving our infrastructure, right? And then planning and development. And we specifically mention things related to parks and parks master plans. And then the other parts that we have in here is open space and buffer from surrounding communities. This really celebrates our open spaces and makes them usable and more used actually in this case. And then a big part of planning and development, the first part of this, and I know this isn't the strategic plan that this board necessarily adopted, but this is the existing strategic plan, right? With that everybody is operating under until we give them a different one. Otherwise, says identify and promote development of community gathering spaces. And everything Parks and Recreation is promoting community gathering and healthy lifestyles. So I think that this request, because not only have I heard from my perspective as liaison to pros, it's widely and wildly supported and promoted at this point. It's falling within our strategic plan. It's falling within many of the items within the comprehensive plan. And it's utilizing money that has been actively saved with community partners. I mean, I don't see a better potential possibility. And I just want to commend everybody involved with this that's bringing this to us as an amazing opportunity. So that's my items for this.
Thank you. Trustee Meagan.
I live over on the east side of the Highway 2, and that park, it's amazing. You get from where the ponds are to the east, it is in kind of bad disarray at the moment. So it's going to be a perfect spot for the dog run, and especially if we can improve it like that and just make that park so much more usable over there and just clean it up completely. I would think that's what's going to be one of our big objectives is over there. As far as the disc course, if we can make that thing or pretty much guarantee as many holes as we can, ADA, approved or compliant, that'd be a fantastic benefit for every people in our community at this point. So, like I say, I'll keep it short and sweet. Think this is going to be a great benefit for the town, and thank you guys.
Thank you, Trustee Moore.
Yeah, I want to echo what Trustee Daly said and just give you guys the kudos that you deserve for saving the money and finding a way to offer more opportunities to our residents. I also wanted to acknowledge the community partnership and the very generous in-kind offer that you've given to the town and your willingness to put in the work and help make this happen. I also, let me see, it says, get out of my brain. That's the Trustee Mason. Oh, it was the timing. I think that I hear what you're saying, Trustee Cannon. However, because of the partnership and the opportunity, the timing is now. And these are funds that we're saving that we can redirect and offer more opportunities. So I am in agreement that this is the perfect time for this project. I also love that you are planning to involve the community and what amenities they want for the dog park. I think that speaks to the community involvement, and I'm a fan. So thank you for your patience and your hard work and for bringing these opportunities to our town.
Thank you. Oh, sure, go for it.
Do you mind? So, and I just want to say, so in support of Trustee Cannon, I do recognize that how he explained it, you are very much correct. And it was circumvented. So possibly I will still support this because I love the community partnerships. I love how it works with the strategic plan, but I feel moving forward that we do need to take what he is discussing to heart, because that is, everyone says stay in your lane, focus on your roles, your responsibilities. You did just that. And I didn't understand but when it was explained, you're very much right. And when we set our budgets and we ask parks to come back with us and make suggestions on how we're going to utilize money, they are just suggestions, because it was stressed time and time again, legally, no advisory board is allowed to spend money. It is only the Board of Trustees. They're allowed to allocate funds. We went through this circle and circle with CAC and how they didn't make sense that CAC existed because they weren't allowed to spend money, blah, blah, blah. So I get it. And I do support the generalized idea that maybe we do need to revisit and discuss what that looks like. Is there leeway in grants where they come to us and tell us there's been an offer? Or do we move forward with discussions? So I do want to give you credit where credit is due and identifying that is the correct procedure and process for how this should have went. I do want to also give credit to say, I know this has been a 2-year discussion that you guys have been having related to the disc golf and updating. Am I correct or?
Very much so. if not
Got it.
longer.
So I know that it's been an extended discussion. So I just want to give that credit and understand that I don't think he's against it at all. He's just stressing a point of how it happened was something that confused him in general. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
Sure thing. Trustee
Again, I
Cannon.
appreciate all the comments from all the trustees. And yes, I recognize what the role of Prost is and being able to bring budget suggestions. I think that's commendable. It still comes down to us approving those expenditures. And like I said, I'm not against doing that, but when I look at our 5-year plan for capital improvement, we've got $175,000 scheduled for this year, and we just saved $40,000 for this grant procedure. And then next year, we've got a $570,000 capital improvement budget. And capital improvement budgets they're not wish lists. You have to figure out, okay, there's a program for doing this. There's a way we're gonna make sure that we can fund these expenditures this year, the next year, and so forth and so on. We have nothing in the final 2 years of our 5-year CIP for parks and recreation. The master plan would probably help you fill that out better and find a way to spread those costs out a little bit more evenly over a period of time. Again, when my comment about the amendment that we passed in the consent agenda, these were items that were in their CIP. They were already identified and identified through a need, and they identified it because they had a master plan, a capital improvement plan that the town funded with the board approval to say, this is what our needs are to handle our water infrastructure. We don't have that plan here. So starting a project without a fully fleshed out plan, starting a project without understanding the true cost of that. I mean, I don't know how much actual planning has been done. It'd be nice if you could elaborate on that, but this still seems a little conceptual to me as it's been presented tonight. So, whatever the board decides, I'm 100% behind it. I'm just saying that
You're not happy with the process?
I'm not happy with the process. And I didn't give an opinion earlier because my opinion is still subject to the discussion we're having here. But the process, to some degree, needs to be followed, needs to be honored, because that's our responsibility, not an advisory board. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to his concern of it potentially being conceptual?
Well, at this point, the course is conceptual, but we've had, as Trustee Teets said, more than 2 years of working with the disc golf club, as well as the last year working with Disc Golf Park to build this project out. There are plans for, I would believe, 2 more on-site meetings prior to actually them building it out, so we can go spec the land and make sure that everything is good on-site, and then they will come back to us with the proposal of the course itself as all 9 holes are set up, and then we will sit down to discuss and approve. So at this point, we have a conceptual idea, but yes, this has been in motion for multiple years.
So again, just for clarity's sake on that, you have a conceptual plan, but you don't have the actual engineering that you can go to whoever's going to make that to get an estimate or cost proposal for how much that is going to truly cost. Is this amendment or this resolution that you're presenting paying for some of that design work?
Yeah, the design work.
So this
the
is just the design.
construction, yeah. And installation, yeah.
From 0 to 100?
Yes.
Well, so there's catches in there, though.
Yeah, there is.
You could see in the contract, it says there's items that are left out at the end of the packet. So tree trimming, all of that kind of stuff, that's all left out of their quote. That's additional work that would have to be done by.
Yeah, but that work is done within our operational budget for the park itself already.
Hours that comes off of parks time.
Not necessarily specific to this project. That is, like I said, within our operational budget that we already do, like tree trimming and stuff. That's something that is in our operational budget that we use since we do not have an arborist. We contract that work out in specific areas of need across the park system.
And stop me if I'm wrong, but the club also helps to maintain the
Yeah, absolutely.
course.
So the 24,950, our purchasing policy, does that require board approval?
It's an unbudgeted item, so yes, it would come before the board.
And just so you know, they do have a single source or a proprietary patent on this product. So the sole source, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
I helped write that policy.
Mr. Mayor, as a reminder, we are 10 minutes out from hitting 10 p.m. We have 2 more agenda items we really need to get to tonight.
Thank you. So my thoughts on it is I think, this is the time to take advantage of this. And we're taking an area that's not being utilized well, if at all, in any way that's safe whatsoever. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this golf course on that side is, the holes aren't there. It's unfinished, not really usable by any sense of the word. And this would make it usable to the general public, and it would also make it accessible to ADA, which at this point we don't not have any ADA accessible holes. And so we would also get the dog park out of it as well. And I know a lot of people on that side of the road or interstate don't have yards or areas where they can take their dogs. So this is a great relief on them as well. So it's an all-encompassing project that I think should and come to fruition. So those are my thoughts. At this point, we can open it up to public comment.
Karen Eifert, I live in the Knolls. First and foremost, if this money is being appropriated for the dock for ADA accommodations, that money cannot be used for anything other than ADA accommodations. If the grant is written for an ADA accommodation of a floating dock, you can't decide to use it for other stuff as well. You can do other additions for that specific thing, but it's written specifically for ADA accommodations. I know that Kelly wrote the grant, wrote the paperwork for it, and I'd be more than happy to get Disability Law Colorado to get involved. Because if you're using something that was only, the funds were only designated for ADA accommodations for a town, for an open public space, then you can't decide what to use the rest of that money for. It must be used also for that exact same type of thing. It can't not be used for building a dog run for sure. And also the American with Disability Act of 1977 says that the ADA takes priority over local and state laws or regulations. And public accommodations are required to make reasonable accommodations unless doing so would be fundamentally alter the nature of their goods, services, or operations, not the size of what they're trying to build. For example, it would not be discriminatory for a cardiologist to refer an individual with hearing loss who has broken bone to an orthopedist. That would not be discrimination because they can't help with that. To require a doctor to see a patient outside of his or her specialty would fundamentally alter the nature of the medical practice. You can't just say, oh, we're going to let you have access to 3 holes. The rest of it, you should just be grateful we give you access to 3 holes. Again, that would also cause me to contact Disability Law Colorado and have them involved. What you are saying is we will give you access to 3, but not to the rest. We'll make you play those over and over again. And that's going to be the same thing. Guess what? It's not the same thing. It's not at all the same thing. And are your specialists going to be out there on the course every single day, 24 hours, 7 days a week to do that anyway? No. But that is in itself exclusion. 3 axis is exclusion. And the entire trail, wherever you have these falls at, those need to be concrete or that's exclusion. My child and my brother, neither one of them can walk on soft ground like that. That's why I have been in here for the last 2.25 years now, talking about how the trail from Mount Adams Street, the access is the green area, the green space where now it's a park in the Knolls that is run by Probst. There's still that soft trail that leads to that sidewalk. And I've been told for that whole time that that would be safe routes to school. And then I was told somebody else was in charge of safe routes to school, then Lisa Chalet. Then it was somebody else. And now I don't know who is actually in charge of that. I've always gotten the runaround of who I need to talk to and who that needs to happen. But I've been guaranteed since day one that that's who would take care of that sidewalk. And we're 2.25 years later. And I asked the town to take care of it. And the town said, oh no, it's not us. That's safe routes to school. And I promise you, Karen, that's going to happen, but it hasn't. When you do these things and you take away the accessibility for people with disabilities, Disability Law Colorado steps in and says, I'll be darned, that's illegal and you're going to have to pay a hefty price for that. New construction has to accommodate people with disabilities, whether you like it or not, whether it's your friend or not. whether it's for a business to have more money or not. It has to be done.
Thank you.
I'll be short. I am short. Stand next to Billy. Aaron McConnell, I'm on the Prost board. Really, one of my biggest concerns is the safety of the disc golf on the Wellville side. We have to do something. We have to remove those baskets. We have to redesign. So it just makes sense. The dog park, obviously everything's under amenitized on the east side. I'm a west sider, so it really doesn't matter to me that much, but no, it does. I'm just kidding. Having the dog park over there, I mean, I like the discussion with the benches and the shaded area, and I mean, all that has to be done. I'd like to talk to Trustee Cannons a little bit. We would love a master plan. Right now, we're operating without one. So we have to just do our best as the Prost board. And so future, I think we'll have that. Everything that I hear in the community, I don't play disc golf, but I'd hate to get hit in the head with one. So that's kind of my biggest concern, is just the safety issue. Something's got to be done. It makes sense with the money that was the grant that went towards the dock. That the ADA accessible dock money is being spent on the ADA accessible dock, not being, I mean, it's not being reallocated to something else. So we're gonna, if approved, move forward with doing that. And I mean, I think it's all positives. I think we would like to operate, and I think the Prost board, we want to operate as with a set of instructions in mind. We're not trying to go willy-nilly anything. We're operating with the best information that we have at the time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor and Trustees. Cody Bird, Planning Director. I admit I didn't really plan on speaking on this item tonight, but I will say that I've worked pretty closely with Mr. Cooksey and team on considerations for this proposal. And I wanted to just quickly maybe dispel a couple of comments that I was hearing tonight throughout discussion and throughout public comments. The town does have a current Parks and Trail master plan. It was adopted in 2015. We've known for a long time that it needs to be updated as things have changed. And that has been proposed in budgets for several years and been pushed and delayed for various reasons for budgetary. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of the things from the 2015 Park and Trail Master Plan that do support this proposal. Wellville Park was identified as an undeveloped and underutilized park. It scored 0 on the score and was left out of the GRASP study because it was undeveloped and underutilized. But the key recommendations of the 2015 Park and Trail Master Plan include exploring ways of increasing recreational activity, focusing on youth activity and connections, adding booster components at existing parks in underserved areas, which is consistent with what's been identified for an underserved area east of I-25 and this park specifically. Wanted to also highlight that, well, this is an underserved area, and we also had some feedback relative to the dog park and amenities on recent public outreach engagement activities around animal control ordinances. And consistently, that theme throughout multiple surveys and public engagement identified the need for amenities such as this, and also identified that one of the biggest barriers to not utilizing the existing dog park was distance and access. So I just wanted to throw those things out there as being germane to the comprehensive plan and park master plan elements that are adopted plans of the town. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize, but we are at 10 o'clock. So do we just need to agree to move forward 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Can I make a motion that we extend our 10 o'clock time to 10:15?
Second.
Ms. Clerk, make a roll call, please. Or let's just do all in favor, aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, one final point. if I may, again, my original comment talked about the structure of the resolution as presented. The way this is written, this is an additional appropriation of 32,950 above the $50,000 that's already been appropriated. So if you're using to offset that, this quite frankly needs to offset that original line item for the $50,000 and bring that down so that, because now the way this is written, we're actually appropriating more funds, which would have to come out of our reserves.
Thank you, sir. All right, any final questions from the board before a motion?
Can you confirm what trustee Cannon is saying in order to make a motion?
Yes, so what we should have done is shown the grant funding and showing it more of a wash on the resolution, now that I'm looking at that, so we can make that amendment.
Will you just say it?
That we will include the amount of the grant as money that's available, and then show the amount of money that would be spent on the multi-golf park and the dog park for Wellville Park.
So moved.
Can we add the water feature and the shade?
As those aren't priced out yet, I would recommend we wait on that.
But we can actually go up to $7,265. Can we not? Is that the overage is $7,265 that we have remaining? It says the fund balance will realize a net increase of $7,265. So could we approve an amount up to 5,000?
Yes.
Is that something that we could?
Once again, this is conceptual, and this will come before us again for final approval
But they have to bring the
for
concept
the
to us,
project,
correct?
correct?
Yeah. So I appreciate your comments, trustee Tees. So in my mind, the way to do that would be to rewrite this resolution showing the offset from the grant and the reduction of the $50,000 to that. And then when they come back with a final approved plan, if it requires another amendment at that time, then it could be considered.
Perfect. Okay, so we had a motion.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
trustee Daly,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
Cannon? Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the resolution is approved with the stated amendment.
thank you. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item E3?
Could I move that we finish out this agenda instead of everything we've done tonight has taken more than 10 minutes? I'd like to get through this entire thing.
There's only two action items left, and we need to get those done
Right.
tonight.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Rather than stopping at 10:15.
So
Oh, we will, at 10:15, we'll just extend the time again.
Yes.
It's just the
Sorry.
process.
You can talk about it during your Board of Trustee rules.
E3, resolution number 36, 2024, a resolution of the town of Wellington considering a contract award for programmable logic controller upgrades.
Thank you, Mr. Nathan. You were.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, my apologies. There's something I would like to just note really quickly. You do have a copy of the resolution in front of you. It was not included in the packet. We will subsequently amend the packet to include it for your awareness. The resolution that you'll be considering is before you. Yes, thank you.
If it wasn't noted, so are you saying it wasn't noticed?
It was on the agenda. There's adequate notice. The resolution itself just wasn't in the packet. The requirements under the open meetings law just requires that we give notice on the agenda itself. So the resolution you're considering itself wasn't in the packet with that text.
So the information wasn't available to the public?
The resolution wasn't, the rest of the information was. If, it's not ideal, but it complies with the open meetings law, so.
Okay. Good evening. Tonight we've got I'm bringing forth a resolution to approve a contract with Prime Controls LP for replacement and upgrade of 4 existing programmable logic controllers that are used at the main water treatment plant and then also at the nano filtration facility that we have here in town. These existing 4 PLCs are old. They're beyond their useful life. We have issues procuring replacement parts for when they do fail, and they have failed. Last month the Nano PLC had some issues, and it was offline for 12 days while we worked on fixing that. The contract is with Prime Controls. They're the new integrator at the new water treatment plant. They've been working there for 2 years. This is a sole source contract with Prime Controls. Something such as programming is generally you only want one person working on that. You don't need multiple controllers or programmers in there, each using their own language and then having to coordinate with each other when things go wrong. So that is our justification for going with the sole source contract. This resolution is connected to item D4, I believe, of the consent agenda, where we elected to move $33,000 from the source water, I forget what the exact language of that CIP item was, but basically defer that CIP item until 2025 and use $33,000 from that line item to cover the costs, the additional costs for this item, for the PLC replacement project. It was originally budgeted with a cost of $105,000 or for $105,000 for 2024. With the reallocation of $33,000, that new line item would be $138,000. And the proposal from Prime Controls was for a total of $125,531. So I'll keep it brief, and I guess if you guys have any questions, I'll stand for them.
One question I had, the resolution that was presented to us here talks about whereas resolution number 34-2024 appropriates an additional $33,000. Is that a typo?
34, I think, was the one that was adopted earlier on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
That's what he's referring to, where the reappropriation there. So this one
Thank you.
ties back to that earlier.
No more questions.
Well, he's just saying that the amount is different.
Thank you. No.
Got it.
Trustee Moore.
No questions. Thank
Trustee
you.
Teets.
No.
No question. All right. We will now open this up for public comment. No public comment. Any further direction, questions from the board? Okay.
I move to approve the execution of the contract with Prime Controls LP for the amount of $125,531.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Trustee Moyer.
Yes.
Trustee Meagan.
Yes.
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Cannon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries and the contract is approved.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item E3? Or 4.
E4, Mr. Mayor, Board Discretionary Fund Request Accessible Community Event.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Hodling will present.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. Kelly Hodling, Deputy Town Administrator. The item before you tonight is a request for board discretionary funding. As a reminder, that pocket of money is in the legislative budget, and that gives the board flexibility when requests come up throughout the year. So there is a request for $500 to utilize that fund, and there's about $19,000 remaining. I've been working very closely with Ms. Eifert here, a community member that would like to host an accessible community event that will enable the members of the public with disabilities, their families, and local law enforcement and fire department to start developing and break down barriers and develop bonds. So the idea is just to get to know one another. So if you see a kid out in public that might be wondering, that there might be some additional tools that our fire department, they might, in LCSO, they might know that community member. They might put a name with a face. If they get a call, they know who they're responding to. And so the idea is really to develop those bridges. And so this event is still in the planning phases, but we are looking at September 7th at Wellington Community Park. And then the $500 would be used for food. So I'm not sure what that would look like. That could be a food truck, or Karen and Miss Eifert and I would work on those details together. But that is a summary. Is there any questions, or I'd like to invite Miss Eifert if she has anything additional to add.
Our hope for this community event, first of all, working with Kelly Howling on any event has really been moving. She is very insightful and very helpful and just brings a lot to the table. But there was an unfortunate event, and it happens across the country. I'm not going to cry. A couple years ago, there was an individual who was an adult and had developmental disabilities who came across an encounter with law enforcement in Loveland. There was a communication breakdown. The deputy did not have the training that was necessary to have the necessary tools to communicate with this individual. And that individual lost his life that day because of the communication breakdown. This happens across the country with traffic stops or individuals who are having a difficulty with their day or having a difficulty with their shoe or whatever that may be. And they take that to the next level, and law enforcement has to be involved. I myself had this scare just a couple years ago. In October, a few years ago, my brother took off here in Wellington. He was found at a gas station here and came up with a story that the bad man was chasing him, and he was really scared. And because the deputies and the what's it called, ambulance drivers, didn't know him and didn't know my family, unfortunately, Sergeant Terry was not on duty that night, and neither was Sergeant Reardon. I don't know exactly when they took over, but those people that were familiar with him were not on duty. And so he got hauled off to Poudre Valley Hospital. And as soon as they realized and pulled up his information there, it was, oh dear, we need to call your sister. And at that point, he'd received a lot of calm down medications and things on board. And it took him a good week and a half to get all that stuff out of his system. And it was unnecessary shock to his system, and it was traumatic for him. And honestly, traumatic for myself. And I would just like to have the opportunity for the deputies to get to know more from age 0 to 200, which is not possible, of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, to put a name to a face and for them to see, like Devin, my son, oh, Devin, this says in here you're a flight risk and that you take medications that you can't be without. I know I need to take you back to your house. Let's take you back to mom and dad. I would love for them to be able to do that. And I would also love for Devin to go, that's Sergeant Cherry. I want to ride in his car and get freely into the car without a fight.
Yeah, he does that.
I know he does that because he loves law enforcement. Also, he loves firefighters. Yeah.
But to be able to identify.
Yeah, but to identify those people, and there's a lot of people who are afraid of firefighters and law enforcement. And I'd really like to break down those barriers and make sure that our people, our town people that have neurological differences can know that they're safe and that our deputies are here to help and our firefighters are here to help. And the people in the ambulance, they're here to help too. Thank you. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I make a motion now to extend past 10:15?
Oh, yes, we need to.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Questions, comments from the board?
So I hear there is a name for this barbecue now.
I don't have my phone. I'm sorry. Sure.
Sorry, guys, but this name was pretty unique, so I wanted to make sure to share it.
my adult brother, when we were growing up, people with disabilities were not allowed to have a voice or an opinion, and they were oftentimes put into other rooms when company came over. So he just really asked that we include voices. And so he asked with my son and my other son, they said, Voices of the Abled Barbecue. Voices of the Abled Barbecue.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have something, actually.
Trustee Moore.
Thank you. So on February 15th, 2022, there was a work session where the discretionary funds were discussed and requirements were talked about. Should there be a process for applying for these funds? Coming from a development background, I think that's a wise thing for us to consider. Some of the possibilities for the outreach funds were 501c3s, organizations that demonstrate sound fiscal management. They meet at least one area of the Wellington strategic plan. They benefit citizens' welfare and education in the region, programs that benefit organizations, on and on and on. Nowhere does it say an individual. And so I realize that she's working with Kelly. However, this is not a town event. This is an individual's barbecue. It's not. Is it a town of Wellington event? I'd like to finish what I was saying. So I would like to ask, I think it sets a dangerous precedent to allow individuals to come and request these funds. I'd like to ask that we put a formal process in place that sets expectations and also requires some sort of final report where we can show the impact of the funds that we are awarding to said programs. That's my ask.
Thank you. I hear your ask. This is a town event with donating for food. Yeah. So, but this is, yes. Yeah. So, any further comments? Trustee Cannon.
I move that we approve $500 from the board discretionary fund for the accessibility community event.
I second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Cannon. Trustee Cannon.
Yes.
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Moyer.
Yes.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the item is approved.
Thank you. All right, at this moment,
Get through the reports real quick.
oh yeah, board reports. Any reports from Mr. Dan Sapienza?
No reports.
Thank you. Any reports from Town Administrator, Ms. Garcia?
Not tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Staff communications have been included in the packet. Are there any questions on these items?
No.
Perfect. Are there any board reports?
No.
Do we still have another executive session?
Yes, we
need
do.
to get to? I
It should be a
propose that
short
we
one.
avoid board reports or make them as quickly as possible, folks.
Have at it.
Safe Routes to School will be holding free bike clinics on July 25th at Main Street Market and August 8th. Come get your bike fixed and get ready for school. That's it.
Perfect. Perfect. Anybody else? Gotta be fair here.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank
No.
you for, thank,
Motion to
All
enter
right, at
executive
this
session.
point, I'd like
Okay.
to enter into executive session.
thank you for a wonderful 4th of July. It was a great celebration. I really appreciate everybody's efforts for that.
Thank you.
Let me read the magic language, then you make a motion. Move into executive section for the purpose of conferences with an attorney for the town pursuant to section 24-6-402-4B CRS for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the ongoing district court case brought by Connell Resources appealing the decision regarding the proposed asphalt plant. The executive session will not be recorded and attorney certification will be provided as provided by CRS section 24-6-402-2D.52B that the discussion in the executive session constitutes privileged attorney communications.
Thank you.
So your motion?
A motion.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Sorry, what was the original motion? My apologies. Trustee Moyer?
No, it wasn't me.
Enter executive session.
That was my motion.
By you, okay.
And I second.
Thank you. Mayor Shosse,
Yes.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can go to the back.
Thank you guys for attending.
No, I did it right here. Consistent.
Thank you. I have a question that needs fixed. And I kept asking Cam and now I'm gonna.
For viewers watching virtually, the live stream will be ended for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Go figure that.